Maine's rugged coastline is dotted with towering cliffs, crashing waves, and ancient lighthouses meant to guide sailors safely to shore. Yet some of these lighthouses hide a darker story. Beyond their guiding lights, there are cliffs where the lights shine by themselves. Shadows move across rocky faces, and visitors report hearing footsteps, whispers, or the mournful cries of those lost at sea. Locals whisper about ghostly figures appearing near the edge, sudden flashes of light in uninhabited towers, and inexplicable cold spots that make the hairs on your neck stand up. Many of these sites were scenes of maritime tragedies, shipwrecks, or lighthouse keepers who vanished mysteriously, leaving spirits that linger between the rocks and fog. Tonight, we will explore 25 of Maine's most haunted lighthouse cliffs, where the lights shine alone in the fog. The winds carry whispers from the past, and the cliffs themselves seem to guard secrets that never sleep. Step carefully, for some cliffs hide memories that cling to the rocks, and spirits that follow silently, waiting for the next visitor to come to close. Portland Head Lighthouse, perched atop the rugged cliffs of Cape Elizabeth, Maine, has long been a sentinel over the Atlantic, its beams slicing through fog and storm alike. Yet beyond its historical importance and maritime legacy, the lighthouse harbors a reputation that draws visitors for reasons less earthly. For decades, locals and travelers alike have whispered about the strange phenomena that occur after dark. Even when the lighthouse is entirely abandoned, its great beacon sometimes flickers to life, casting an eerie glow over the craggy shoreline. Ghostly figures have been reported pacing along the cliff edges, motionless yet watchful, as though guarding the waves below. These spectral presences, combined with the lighthouse's isolation and the ceaseless roar of the ocean, have cemented Portland Head Lighthouse as one of Maine's most haunted landmarks. Visitors first notice an unsettling stillness that seems to descend over the lighthouse grounds as twilight approaches. The cliffside wind whistles sharply, carrying the scent of salt and seaweed, and the waves crash violently against jagged rocks below. The air often feels charged, as though holding its breath. Shadows stretch unnaturally along the stone walkways and cliffs, sometimes forming shapes that seem vaguely human. Guests report glimpsing figures standing at the very edge of the precipice, staring down at the swirling waters. When approached, these figures vanish, leaving only the faintest disturbance in the air, as if the wind itself had shifted. The light within the lighthouse behaves in ways that defy logic. Many visitors recount seeing it ignite after nightfall. Even though no caretaker is present, the beam sweeps slowly across the ocean, illuminating the waves and nearby rocks in stark white light. At times, it seems to move with intent, pausing on particular sections of the cliff or focusing on distant ships as though seeking something long lost. Some have reported hearing the faint creak of the rotating lens mechanism and the whisper of footsteps within the tower. Even when the building stands empty, others describe a sense of anticipation, as if the lighthouse itself is aware of their presence, responding in subtle, inexplicable ways. Along the cliff edges, ghostly figures are often observed, pacing silently. These apparitions, some in what appear to be old maritime uniforms, stand at the precipice, their gaze fixed on the tumultuous waters below. Witnesses describe a chilling sense of recognition, as though the figures are familiar yet impossible to identify. The wind carries fragments of sound-muted voices, distant shouts, and occasional chrysicles of lives once tied to the sea. At times, these figures appear to move in a deliberate pattern, tracing the cliff line with careful steps, vanishing when directly confronted. The presence of these phantoms creates a tension that can be felt deep in the chest, a reminder that the lighthouse and the cliffs are not merely landscapes but repositories of memory and sorrow. Inside the lighthouse, visitors report strange occurrences that defy explanation. The stairwell, spiraling tightly within the stone walls, seems to extend farther than its physical limits suggest. Guests have felt cold drafts brush past them, carrying the faint smell of brine and old lamp oil. Occasionally, faint whispers are heard echoing through the narrow corridors, fragments of conversations, urgent warnings, or names called out softly. Some claim to have seen fleeting glimpses of figures climbing the stairs ahead of them, only to vanish moments later. Personal belongings left on observation decks or stair landings have been found displaced, as though handled by unseen hands. These subtle disturbances compound the sense that Portland Head Lighthouse exists in a liminal space between the living world and the echoes of the past. The history of Portland Head Lighthouse provides context for the persistent haunting. Built in the late 18th century, the lighthouse has guided countless sailors through treacherous waters, shipwrecks, maritime rescues, and the constant vigilance of lighthouse keepers have left deep emotional imprints on the site. Many ghost stories connect directly to these historical events: the spectral keepers, the mournful figures of sailors lost at sea, and the light that flickers as though warning against unseen dangers. Locals recount that storms bring heightened activity, with the wind and rain amplifying the sounds of whispered warnings, phantom footsteps, and the sudden illumination of the beacon. Visitors often sense that the spirits are bound to the lighthouse and cliffs, replaying moments of duty, tragedy, and vigilance endlessly. The lighthouse's surroundings also play a role in the haunting. The cliff edges are jagged and treacherous, and the Atlantic's waves crash endlessly against the rocks below. Visitors report feeling drawn to the precipice, a subtle tug of curiosity or unseen force guiding them toward the edge. The shadows along the cliffs seem to stretch and shift, moving independently of the wind or ambient light. Some have felt cold hands brush against their shoulders, though no one is present, while others have sensed breath like gusts in narrow corridors. Even the ocean itself seems to participate in the haunting, waves rising and falling with unnatural timing, as though echoing the steps of the unseen figures above. Visitors who linger too long often describe a disorienting sense of time. Hours can pass in what feels like minutes, and the repetitive cycle of light, shadow, and sound creates a hypnotic effect. The light, the figures, and the whispers combine to immerse guests in a world where past and present overlap. Some report seeing entire reenactments of events, phantom keepers performing nightly routines, sailors signaling from distant rocks, and the flickering lights scanning the sea for lost ships. Others leave the lighthouse feeling an unshakable presence lingering with them, an awareness that the cliffs and beacon continue to watch and move, even after they have departed. Portland Head Lighthouse is more than a historical landmark. It is a living testament to the lives and tragedies intertwined with its existence. The light shines even when no one is present. Ghostly figures pace the cliff edges, and the wind carries whispers from ages past. Visitors experience a liminal space where history, memory, and the supernatural converge, where the ocean, cliffs, and lighthouse act as conduits for restless spirits. Those who dare to explore after dark find themselves in a world where the past refuses to be silent, where shadows observe, and where the light may guide or warn all who linger too long. The lighthouse waits in patient vigilance, ensuring that every nightfall brings the possibility of witnessing the unseen. A silent reminder of the power and presence of Portland Head's haunted legacy. Pemaquid Point Lighthouse, standing proudly on the rocky shores of Bristol, Maine, has long been a beacon for sailors navigating the treacherous waters of the Atlantic. Its stark white walls and red roof are iconic against the rugged coastline, drawing photographers, historians, and visitors from far and wide. But beyond its picturesque exterior and historical significance, the lighthouse has developed a reputation for haunting phenomena that have puzzled locals and visitors alike. Shadows are said to glide along the rocks at night, moving independently of wind or light, while cries for help echo eerily from the water below, chilling those who venture near after dark. Pemaquid Point is not only a landmark, it is a place where the boundary between the living and the spectral seems thin, a location where past tragedies linger and whisper in the night. Visitors first feel the presence of something unusual as they approach the lighthouse after sunset. The jagged rocks that surround the point seem to stretch endlessly, dark shapes hiding in the shadows. The Atlantic crashes relentlessly against the cliffs, creating a thunderous backdrop. But even amidst this natural fury, an unnatural quiet can settle over the landscape. It is then that the shadows become visible, long, dark figures that glide effortlessly across the rocky terrain. Observers report that these forms move with purpose, as though patrolling the cliffs, and disappear when directly approached. Some visitors have described the sensation of being watched, of feeling eyes upon them from the darkness, though no living person is present. The effect is both unsettling and mesmerizing, as the shadows seem to acknowledge and track each visitor without ever revealing themselves fully. The cries for help add another layer of haunting to Pemaquid Point. They are not constant, but appear suddenly, carried across the wind from the water below. Some describe them as muffled, desperate shouts of sailors lost at sea, others as clear and urgent, echoing off the cliffs and rocks with bone-chilling precision. On particularly stormy nights, the cries intensify, layering with the roar of waves and the snap of wind to create a soundscape that seems almost orchestrated. Visitors often feel compelled to search the shoreline or scan the ocean, only to find emptiness, the water churning and indifferent. The combination of visual and auditory phenomena leaves a lasting impression, an awareness that something beyond explanation exists along these rocks. Inside the lighthouse itself, the haunting continues in subtle but undeniable ways. The spiral staircase, winding tightly within the tower, is said to creak under phantom footsteps, as if someone ascends or descends when no one is present. The keeper's quarters, now largely empty and preserved as historical exhibits, occasionally emit sounds of activity, doors opening and closing, faint footsteps pacing, even murmured words that vanish when listened to closely. Visitors report cold drafts that seem to follow them from room to room, brushing along arms and necks without origin. Some have glimpsed shadows flitting across the walls, elongated and warped, moving independently of the lighthouse's lamps and the moonlight streaming through the windows. These occurrences, subtle yet persistent, give the impression that the lighthouse remains occupied by more than just memories. It is inhabited by remnants of lives once tied to the land and sea. The history of Pemaquid Point Lighthouse helps to explain, though not fully, the nature of these hauntings. Constructed in 1827, the lighthouse has guided countless ships safely through dangerous waters. Yet not all who sailed these seas survived. Numerous shipwrecks occurred along this stretch of coast, their victims claimed by the unforgiving Atlantic. Legends persist of sailors who disappeared without a trace, their spirits bound to the rocks and the water. Some ghost stories speak of the lighthouse keepers themselves, who endured lonely nights tending the beacon, witnessing the fury of storms, and rescuing shipwrecked souls, only to vanish under mysterious circumstances. Each tragedy, each life intertwined with the rocks and waves, seems to leave an imprint, a lingering presence that continues to manifest in shadow and sound. Visitors often describe a sense of temporal disorientation, while at Pemaquid Point, minutes can stretch into hours, and the repetition of sounds and sights, gliding shadows, whispered cries, and flickering lights creates a hypnotic effect. Some report glimpsing figures performing tasks from decades or even centuries past, sailors struggling against waves, keepers climbing stairs to light the beacon, and rescuers carrying survivors up the cliffs. These visions are fleeting but vivid, leaving the observer with the strong impression that the lighthouse and its surrounding rocks are alive with memory, replaying events that the living can witness but never fully participate in. The shoreline itself seems to play an active role in these spectral manifestations. The jagged cliffs and rocks amplify sound, allowing whispers and cries to travel unnaturally far, while the tide and wind create shifting patterns of shadow and light that give life to phantom movements. Some visitors have experienced objects shifting inexplicably along the rocks, small stones or driftwood rolling or bouncing as if guided by unseen hands. Even the Atlantic itself appears to participate, with waves that rise and fall in patterns that mirror the pacing of shadows or echo the rhythms of the cries. There is a sense that Pemaquid Point is a living canvas of memory, where the elements themselves interact with the lingering spirits to create a world both beautiful and terrifying. Those who linger too long at Pemaquid Point Lighthouse often leave with a lasting impression, a heightened awareness of shadows, sounds, and unseen presences in the ordinary world. Dreams may be haunted by visions of the gliding figures or the desperate cries from the water. Visitors often speak of feeling the lighthouse's gaze long after departing, as though the spirits and the land continue to observe them. Pemaquid Point Lighthouse is not merely a historical monument. It is a living testament to lives lost, duties fulfilled, and tragedies endured along the Maine coastline. Shadows glide silently along the rocks, cries echo across the water, and the wind carries whispers of lives forever entwined with the lighthouse. Visitors may stand on the cliffs, observing the ocean's vast expanse, but they are never truly alone. The lighthouse and the surrounding cliffs remain vigilant, their spectral residents performing eternal routines, replaying the past, and reminding all who dare to stay that some places never forget, and some spirits never truly leave. Nubble Lighthouse, perched on the jagged cliffs of York, Maine, stands as one of the most photographed and visited lighthouses along the Atlantic coast. Its white tower and red-roofed keeper's house make it a striking presence against the rocky shoreline, drawing countless visitors every year. Yet beneath its picturesque exterior lies a history and presence that many consider haunted. Locals and travelers alike have reported unusual phenomena that occur when darkness and fog descend upon the cape. The lighthouse's beacon sometimes shines with no keeper present, cutting a steady arc across the mist-laden waters. Shadowy figures are glimpsed in the fog, moving silently along the cliffs, only to vanish before they reach the precipice. These reports have persisted for decades, turning Nubble Lighthouse into a place where the natural beauty of the Maine coast is intertwined with eerie, unexplained occurrences. Visitors often first notice the unusual phenomena as evening falls and the Atlantic fog begins to roll in from the sea. The rocks below the lighthouse glisten under the low light, slick from the ocean spray, and the wind carries the unmistakable scent of salt and brine. As darkness deepens, the beacon occasionally ignites without warning. Some have arrived to find the lighthouse empty, the doors locked, and yet the light sweeping methodically across the waves, illuminating the water and the cliffs in an eerie, pale glow. This sudden illumination can last for minutes or longer, providing a ghostly spectacle that leaves witnesses questioning whether someone unseen is tending the light or if something far stranger is at play. The fog itself seems to take on a life of its own around the lighthouse. Shadowy forms have been observed drifting through the mist, appearing humanoid yet indistinct. Witnesses often describe them as moving with purpose, gliding rather than walking, yet disappearing the instant anyone attempts to approach or focus on them. These apparitions seem confined to the edge of vision, always at the threshold where fog and reality blur. Some visitors have reported the sensation of being followed, hearing faint footsteps crunching on the rocky terrain, or seeing movement just beyond the lighthouse grounds. The combination of fog, beacon light, and spectral figures creates a disorienting environment where perception is uncertain and the natural and supernatural intertwine. Inside the lighthouse, additional phenomena have been reported, although the tower is often closed to the public. Former keepers and maintenance personnel recount instances of cold drafts moving through the living quarters, doors opening and closing on their own, and fleeting glimpses of figures climbing the spiral staircase when no one else is present. Footsteps echo along the narrow stone stairs, often halting abruptly as though the visitor has been noticed. Some have even claimed to hear faint, indistinct voices within the tower, though they fade when anyone tries to identify their source. These subtle disturbances contribute to the growing reputation of Nubble Lighthouse as more than a historical landmark. It is a place where lingering presences interact with the environment in ways that defy rational explanation. The history of Nubble Lighthouse provides a backdrop that seems to amplify these hauntings. Constructed in 1879, the lighthouse has guided countless vessels safely past the treacherous rocks and waters of York Harbor. Over the decades, keepers endured long, solitary nights tending the light, often witnessing storms and shipwrecks from the tower. Many of the hauntings are attributed to these past keepers, as well as sailors who may have perished along the coast. Legends tell of figures that mirror the routines of the past phantom keepers climbing stairs to tend the light. sailors pacing the cliffs, searching for lost ships, and shadows that replay moments of duty or despair. Each tragedy, each story of survival and loss, appears to leave an impression on the land, manifesting in the spectral phenomena reported today. Visitors often describe a heightened sense of perception when the fog and night envelop the lighthouse. Time seems distorted, with minutes stretching into hours, as shadows glide across rocks and along the cliff edges. The beacon's light sometimes swings in ways that appear deliberate, pausing on a certain point along the water, as though acknowledging unseen activity below. The combination of natural elements, the Atlantic winds, fog, waves crashing against rocks, and the lingering presences, creates an atmosphere of both awe and unease. Guests frequently remark on the sensation of being observed, though no living person is nearby, or feeling a subtle pull toward certain areas of the cliffs where shadowy figures vanish. The lighthouse's surroundings further contribute to its spectral reputation. The rocky outcrops, jagged and slippery, form a natural stage for the movement of shadows and figures. Visitors have seen the mist curling around rocks in unnatural ways, giving the impression of bodies or shapes forming and dispersing in seconds. Some report that objects like driftwood or small stones move inexplicably along the shoreline, seemingly nudged by unseen hands. The Atlantic itself seems to participate in these hauntings, with waves rising in patterns that echo the movement of figures, and the wind carrying whispers and sounds of footsteps across the rocks. Those who spend long periods near Nubble Lighthouse often leave with a lasting impression. Even after returning home, many report sensing the presence of the lighthouse, the fog, and the unseen figures in their dreams, or in peripheral vision. Others recall the beacon's light, cutting through the night, casting shadows on rocks that seem to move independently, leaving an indelible mark on memory. For those brave enough to explore after dark, the lighthouse offers a world where history, nature, and the supernatural converge, a place where shadows glide silently. Cries echo across the fog, and the past is never truly gone. Nubble Lighthouse is more than a navigational aid or a scenic attraction. It is a living repository of memory and mystery. The beacon shines on foggy nights without a keeper. Shadowy forms drift along the cliffs, and whispers echo over the waves. Visitors experience an environment where the ordinary becomes extraordinary, where the boundary between the living and the spectral is thin, and where the lighthouse itself seems to act as a guardian of the past. For anyone who lingers too long, the cliffs and the light hold the promise of revealing unseen truths, and the presence of lost souls reminds all who visit that some places never relinquish their stories, and some spirits never truly rest. West Quoddy Head Lighthouse, standing proudly at the easternmost tip of Lubec, Maine, has guided countless ships safely through the jagged coastline of the Bay of Fundy. Its distinctive red and white striped tower, perched atop rocky cliffs, is a beacon of history and maritime safety. Even during warm summer days, an icy chill often permeates the air around the lighthouse, and ghostly phenomena have been reported with increasing frequency. Footsteps echo across the rocks when no one is present. Phantom lights flicker within the tower, and the overall atmosphere hints at presences that are unseen but palpably felt. For many who approach the lighthouse after dark, West Quoddy Head becomes more than a historical landmark. It transforms into a stage for the mysterious and the spectral. Visitors often sense the haunting presence before they even reach the lighthouse. As evening descends, however, an unnatural quiet can settle over the cliffs, broken only by the rhythmic crashing of the Atlantic waves. It is during these moments that footsteps have been reported echoing over the stones. Witnesses often describe the sound as deliberate and methodical, pacing across the cliffs with intent. Some have attempted to locate the source, only to find the rocks empty and the wind carrying nothing but the distant roar of the sea. The sensation is disorienting, leaving an impression that invisible figures are walking alongside visitors. maintaining a silent vigil over the lighthouse and its surrounding terrain. The tower itself holds a reputation for more unsettling phenomena. Even when the lighthouse is unmanned, lights have been seen flickering inside. Witnesses describe seeing the lantern room illuminate briefly before fading, as if someone had climbed the narrow spiral staircase to tend the beacon. On several occasions, visitors have claimed the light remained lit for extended periods, despite no visible keeper inside. The effect is striking and otherworldly, especially against the backdrop of the darkened Atlantic and the jagged cliffs below. Some locals suggest that these lights are echoes of past lighthouse keepers, their duties continuing beyond the constraints of life and time. Others believe the lights are a warning, a reminder of the treacherous waters and rocky shores that have claimed countless lives over the centuries. The chilling sensation reported by many adds to the lighthouse's mystique. Despite the warmth of summer, the air near West Quoddy Head often feels icy, brushing against skin and seeping into clothing. Visitors report shivers and goosebumps as they walk along the cliffside paths, and some describe a weighty feeling, as though unseen eyes are observing their every move. The combination of cold air, phantom lights, and unexplained footsteps creates an atmosphere that is both captivating and unnerving. Even experienced hikers and lighthouse enthusiasts acknowledge a sense of unease that cannot be explained by geography or weather alone. Historical context adds depth to these haunting phenomena. Established in 1808, West Quoddy Head Lighthouse has guided vessels through one of the most dangerous stretches of the Atlantic coastline. Over the years, the lighthouse has witnessed countless shipwrecks, stormy nights, and long hours of solitary duty for its keepers. Many of the reported hauntings are attributed to these past residents and sailors lost to the sea. Ghostly figures are said to mirror the routines of the keepers, pacing the spiral staircase, tending the beacon, or standing at the edge of the cliffs, watching for approaching vessels. Sailors lost along the coast are believed to leave echoes of their final moments, carried by the wind and manifesting as footsteps on rocks or flickering lights in the tower. Each tragedy seems to leave an indelible mark, creating a landscape where memory and reality intersect. Visitors who linger near the lighthouse after dark often report a disorienting experience of time. Minutes stretch, and familiar landmarks seem distorted in the fog or under moonlight. Shadows flit across the rocks, sometimes visible only from the corner of the eye. Some report glimpsing forms resembling lighthouse keepers climbing the tower, figures of sailors navigating the cliffs, or silhouettes of those swept away by the sea. These visions are fleeting yet vivid, leaving a lasting impression on the witness. The surrounding terrain amplifies the haunting experience. The jagged cliffs, steep rocks, and crashing waves create natural acoustics that make footsteps, whispers, and distant cries carry unnaturally far. On some nights, the wind shifts in ways that mimic human movement, carrying sounds from the cliffs to the tower and back. Those who spend time at West Quoddy Head Lighthouse often leave with more than memories of scenic beauty. They carry with them a heightened awareness of shadows, sounds, and unseen presences. Dreams may be haunted by images of figures pacing cliffs, lights igniting in the lantern room, or the icy gusts of wind that defy summer warmth. The lighthouse leaves a lingering impression, a reminder that some locations hold memory and mystery long after the human eye can perceive them. West Quoddy Head Lighthouse is more than a beacon for sailors. It is a sentinel of history, tragedy, and lingering spirits. Phantom footsteps echo on the rocks, lights flicker in the tower without explanation, and icy winds brush against all who dare to approach. Visitors may witness only glimpses, but those who linger experience the convergence of past and present, where the ghosts of keepers, sailors, and lost souls continue their eternal watch over the cliffs and waves. In the presence of West Quoddy Head, it becomes clear that some places never release their stories, and some spirits never truly leave, remaining forever tied to the land and sea they once knew. Base Harbor Head Lighthouse, perched on the rocky cliffs of Mount Desert Island, Maine, is a striking symbol of maritime history. Its white tower and red-roofed keeper's house stand boldly against the Atlantic waves, guiding ships safely along a treacherous coastline. Yet, beyond its scenic charm and historical importance, the lighthouse has long been associated with unexplained phenomena that have intrigued both locals and visitors. Figures have been seen pacing near the cliff's edge, staring silently at the relentless ocean, and sudden flashes of light appear within the tower, often accompanied by faint, indistinct whispers. For those who approach after dark, Bass Harbor Head transforms from a tranquil landmark into a stage for mystery and spectral presence. Visitors often first sense the unusual occurrences as evening approaches. The sun dips below the horizon, casting the cliffs and lighthouse in deep, elongated shadows. The wind sweeps across the jagged rocks, carrying the salty scent of the sea and an almost tangible chill that can strike even on warm summer nights. As darkness deepens, figures are reported pacing along the cliff edges. Witnesses describe these shapes as humanoid, yet indistinct, moving with deliberate steps, pausing as though contemplating the waves below, and then vanishing when approached. Some report the eerie sensation of being watched, as though unseen eyes are tracking their every movement along the rocky paths. The lighthouse tower itself is a focal point of many strange accounts. Flashes of light are seen within the lantern room at irregular intervals, illuminating the surrounding cliffs and water for brief moments before fading. Some visitors report the light igniting even when the tower is confirmed empty, with no keeper present to operate it. These luminous bursts are often accompanied by whispers, soft and fleeting, echoing through the night air. The voices are rarely coherent, but they create an unnerving sense of presence, as if past keepers or long-lost sailors are communicating from another time. Many who have witnessed these phenomena describe an intense feeling of being drawn toward the tower, an invisible pull that compels them to climb the steps and search for the source, only to find emptiness and silence. The history of Bass Harbor Head Lighthouse adds layers of intrigue to the supernatural accounts. Established in 1858, the lighthouse has stood guard over one of the most dangerous stretches of the Maine coastline for over a century. Keepers endured long, solitary nights, battling storms, waves, and isolation to ensure the beacon remained lit. Numerous shipwrecks occurred nearby, claiming lives and leaving stories of tragedy and loss. Many believe that the figures seen pacing the cliffs are echoes of these lost souls, repeating gestures and routines from lives interrupted by the relentless sea. The whispers and lights are thought to be manifestations of the lighthouse's memory, preserving the presence of those who once inhabited it or relied on it for guidance. Visitors who linger into the night often report a heightened sense of awareness. Time appears to stretch and warp under the combined influence of fog, moonlight, and the constant murmur of the ocean. Shadows flit across rocks and along cliff edges, visible only from the corner of one's eye. Flashes from the tower create moving shapes that seem independent of the light's path, and the whispers carry across the cliffs, sometimes calling names or repeating fragments of sentences. Those who experience these phenomena describe a strange mixture of awe and unease, a feeling that the boundary between the physical world and something unseen has thinned. The surrounding cliffs and rocky terrain enhance the sense of the supernatural. The uneven surfaces create acoustics that carry footsteps, whispers, and distant sounds in unnatural ways, making it difficult to discern their source. On windy nights, sounds can appear to move along the cliffs, shifting unpredictably, sometimes approaching the visitor and then receding just as suddenly. Some have reported seeing figures silhouetted against the horizon, seemingly balanced on the precipice, only to disappear when attention is directed toward them. Others claim that stones and debris move inexplicably across the rocks, as though nudged by unseen hands, adding to the lighthouse's spectral reputation. Inside the lighthouse, although largely restricted, There are also reports of cold drafts moving through the keeper's quarters and spiral staircase. The combination of physical sensation and auditory experience leaves a lasting impression, making even short visits memorable. Visitors sometimes describe dreams influenced by the lighthouse, visions of figures pacing the cliffs, or flashes of light in the tower that seem to continue even after leaving Mount Desert Island. Those who spend extended periods at Bass Harbor Head Lighthouse often describe an uncanny awareness of its history and lingering presences. The pacing figures on the cliffs, the flickering lights in the tower, and the whispers carried by the wind seem to form a narrative of lives lived and lost along the coastline. Bass Harbor Head Lighthouse remains a sentinel over the Atlantic, a beacon of safety and mystery. Figures pace along the cliffs, phantom lights flicker in the tower, and whispers drift through the wind, creating an atmosphere where history, nature, and the supernatural converge. For those who linger until nightfall, the lighthouse offers a hauntingly beautiful reminder that some places never relinquish their stories, that some presences endure, and that the boundary between the living and the spectral is far thinner than it appears. In the shadow of Bass Harbor Head, the ocean and the cliffs hold the echoes of the past. The flickers of light hint at unseen caretakers, and the whispers remind all who approach that some mysteries are meant to be felt as much as they are seen. Cape Nettic, Nubble Lighthouse, perched dramatically on a small rocky island off the coast of York, Maine, is one of the state's most iconic maritime landmarks. Its white tower and red-roofed Keeper S house have guided sailors safely through the Atlantic's often unforgiving waters for more than a century. Yet, beyond its picturesque charm and historical significance, the lighthouse is steeped in tales of the unexplained. Visitors frequently report the light sweeping across the cliffs even when the tower is unmanned or the power is shut off. Shadowy figures are said to move silently among the jagged rocks, and the atmosphere is thick with an almost tangible sense of presence, as if the lighthouse itself watches over its domain even when empty. Arriving at Nubble Lighthouse in the late afternoon, one is struck by the sheer isolation of the site. The lighthouse perches on a rocky outcrop, separated from the mainland by a small stretch of water, accessible via a narrow causeway. As the sun dips toward the horizon, the Atlantic's waves crash violently against the rocks, producing a constant, rhythmic roar. It is during these hours that visitors first notice a subtle shift in the air. The wind takes on a cooler bite, and an uneasy stillness seems to settle over the cliffs, contrasting sharply with the ocean's turbulent energy. Those who have lingered past sunset often report the sensation of being watched, an unshakable feeling that unseen eyes track each step along the rocky terrain. The lighthouse itself is a focus of the uncanny experiences, even when the tower's power is disconnected from maintenance or during off-season hours. The beacon is sometimes seen sweeping across the cliffside as though lit by an invisible hand. Witnesses describe the movement of the light as deliberate, scanning the rocks, the water, and the shoreline with purpose. In some accounts, the beam illuminates nothing but empty space, yet it moves as if aware of unseen observers. These ghostly displays often coincide with the appearance of shadowy figures along the cliff's humanoid shapes, slightly indistinct, pacing or standing motionless, observing the crashing waves below. When approached, these figures vanish, leaving no footprints or other evidence of presence, as if they existed solely in the perception of those who encounter them. The history of Cape Nettic Lighthouse adds a layer of eerie context to these experiences. Established in 1879, the lighthouse has withstood fierce storms, isolation, and decades of human oversight. Lighthouse keepers were tasked with maintaining the light through all manner of weather, often spending long, solitary nights in the keeper's quarters. and that the shadowy figures may be lingering spirits, silently repeating routines from a past steeped in responsibility, danger, and solitude. Visitors who linger after dark often describe an intensified experience. The crashing waves seem amplified, echoing through the cliffs in patterns that resemble footsteps or murmured speech. Shadows stretch unnaturally across the rocks and jagged formations, moving independently of the natural light. The effect is disorienting, creating an impression that the boundary between the physical and the spectral is thin, fragile, and permeable. The rugged terrain surrounding Nubble enhances the sense of isolation and vulnerability. The cliffs are steep, slippery, and jagged, amplifying the natural acoustics so that every footfall or movement carries further than expected. Visitors often report hearing footsteps behind them, echoing from empty sections of rock or across gaps in the cliffside. Yet when they turn, nothing is there. Stones appear to move or tumble without cause, and shadows dart between rocks, disappearing when directly observed. The combination of visual, auditory, and tactile experiences reinforces the lighthouse's reputation as a site where the past lingers, interacting with the present in subtle but unmistakable ways. Some of the most compelling accounts involve fleeting interactions with the shadowy figures themselves. Witnesses describe humanoid silhouettes pausing at cliff edges, sometimes mimicking the stance of a lighthouse keeper scanning the horizon. Others report seeing figures move along the waterline or near the rocks, only to vanish as they step into the darkened recesses of the cliffs. These figures are rarely aggressive or threatening. Instead, they convey an awareness, a sense of presence that is intentional and purposeful. Many who encounter them feel an inexplicable pull toward the lighthouse or the cliff's edge, as if drawn into the history and memories embedded in the landscape. Even during daylight hours, some visitors report subtle signs of the lighthouse's haunted reputation. Glimpses of figures in peripheral vision, inexplicable chills, or the sudden sense of being observed are common. Many leave with a lingering impression that the lighthouse is not just a historical structure, but a living repository of memory, guardianship, and unresolved presence. Cape Nettic Nubble Lighthouse is more than a navigational aid. It is a sentinel over both the sea and the stories carried by its cliffs. The ghostly light sweeping across the rocks, the shadowy figures pacing the edges, and the whispers that ride the wind form a tapestry of maritime memory and spectral presence. For those who linger until nightfall, the lighthouse reveals that some places never truly relinquish their history, that some spirits remain vigilant long after life has ended, and that the Atlantic waves carry more than water. They carry echoes of devotion, loss, and watchful eyes that never sleep. In the presence of Nubble Lighthouse, the boundary between the living and the unseen is uncertain, and every flash of light or shadow along the rocks is a reminder that some mysteries endure as surely as the tides themselves. To Light's Lighthouse, standing proudly on the rugged cliffs of Cape Elizabeth, Maine, is a striking emblem of maritime history and coastal beauty. Its twin towers, white with red accents, have guided countless vessels through the treacherous waters of the Atlantic for generations. But beyond its scenic charm and historical significance, the lighthouse is known for a more mysterious presence. Visitors often report hearing footsteps along the cliffside when no one else is present. The beacon, too, sometimes shines steadily toward the ocean, even when the lighthouse is unattended, as if carrying out a duty left unfulfilled by the living. Those who linger near the cliffs at dusk or night often describe an eerie sense that the lighthouse and its surroundings are alive with memory and unseen watchfulness. Arriving at Two Lights Lighthouse, the first sensation that visitors notice is the isolation of the site. The cliffs rise sharply above the churning ocean, and the wind sweeps across the rocks with an almost sentient force. Even during calm days, the constant roar of the waves mingles with the cries of seabirds, creating a natural soundtrack that can make one feel acutely aware of every step. As evening falls, the air grows colder, and the shadows of the cliffs deepen. It is during these moments that reports of unexplained phenomena often begin. Visitors have described the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoing along the cliffside, moving closer and then fading without any visible source. The lighthouse itself becomes a focal point for strange experiences. The twin towers are usually empty after sunset, yet the beacon is sometimes seen sweeping across the ocean as though operated by invisible hands. Witnesses report that the light appears deliberate, scanning the waters in wide, measured arcs, occasionally illuminating the surface of the waves for fleeting moments. Those who have witnessed this describe a combination of awe and unease, as the light seems purposeful, almost alive, and yet disconnected from any visible operator. The phenomenon is often accompanied by the softest of whispers, carried by the wind along the cliffs. Words are rarely intelligible, yet the tone is unmistakably human, conveying urgency, warning, or perhaps a lingering sense of duty. History provides some context for these eerie occurrences. Tulight's Lighthouse was built in 1874, with a second tower added shortly after to improve navigational safety. Keepers of the lighthouse spent long, solitary nights attending the lights, braving storms, isolation, and the relentless Atlantic winds. Tragedy occasionally touched these lives. Accidents along the cliffs, sudden illness, and shipwrecks claimed both visitors and caretakers. Many believe that the lighthouse's unusual phenomena are echoes of these past experiences, ghostly imprints of human vigilance, loss, and devotion. The beacon continues to sweep across the ocean, and the footsteps echoing along the cliffside may be the restless motions of those who once guarded this perilous stretch of coast. Visitors who linger into the night often describe an intensified awareness of the surroundings. The interplay of fog, moonlight, and crashing waves heightens the senses, making shadows appear to move independently and amplifying even the faintest sound. Figures are sometimes glimpsed near the cliffs, silhouetted against the horizon. They seem humanoid but vanish instantly when observed directly. Footsteps may approach and recede in irregular patterns, creating the impression that unseen individuals are pacing along the rocks, keeping vigil over the lighthouse and the waters below. The physical landscape contributes to the sense of otherworldliness. The jagged cliffs amplify natural sounds, carrying whispers, footsteps, and the crash of waves in unpredictable ways. Stones sometimes appear to shift or tumble without explanation, and the vegetation along the cliff edges seems to sway in the absence of wind. Visitors report the sensation of being watched, a subtle pressure at the back of the mind, as if unseen eyes track every movement. The combination of visual, auditory, and tactile experiences reinforces the perception that the lighthouse and its surroundings are imbued with residual energy from the past. The ghostly light and phantom footsteps are not the only unusual phenomena. Some visitors describe fleeting glimpses of figures at the cliff edge, appearing to stand in silent contemplation of the ocean before vanishing. Others have sensed the faint presence of someone walking behind them, or have heard whispered warnings carried by sudden gusts of wind. The lighthouse seems to preserve the memory of those who once worked tirelessly to keep its beacon alive, projecting their presence into the modern day in subtle but unmistakable ways. Even during daylight hours, the lighthouse exerts a quiet, enigmatic influence. Shadows linger where they should not, and the cliffs seem to hum with an almost imperceptible energy. The beacon, though rarely lit during off hours, has been reported to shine faintly on overcast days, prompting speculation that some unseen force continues to maintain its vigil. Those who visit leave with a sense that the lighthouse is more than a historical monument. It is a living archive of memory, vigilance, and unresolved presence, bridging the gap between the human and the spectral. Marshall Point Lighthouse, perched at the edge of Port Clyde in Maine, is a beacon of both maritime history and mysterious phenomena. Its white tower and attached keeper's house, standing resolutely against the Atlantic waves, have guided sailors safely for decades. Yet, beyond its picturesque charm and historical significance, the lighthouse is steeped in tales of the unexplained. Visitors often report seeing shadowy figures near the jagged rocks surrounding the lighthouse, only to vanish into the rolling coastal fog moments later. Sudden bursts of light sometimes illuminate the cliffs without explanation, casting long, distorted shadows across the rocky terrain and sending chills down the spines of those who witness them. Arriving at Marshall Point, one is immediately struck by the isolation of the lighthouse. The Atlantic crashes relentlessly against a rocky coastline, and the wind carries the briny scent of the ocean across the narrow path leading to the lighthouse itself. Even during sunny afternoons, the cliffs exude a sense of quiet tension, as if the site holds memories too persistent to fade. Visitors approaching the lighthouse often notice subtle movements along the rock shapes that appear to shift in the mist, disappearing the instant one tries to focus on them. The fog, thick and swirling in the early morning or late evening, seems almost alive, curling around the rocks and lighthouse in ways that conceal as much as it reveals. The lighthouse tower itself becomes a focal point for the unexplained. Even on nights when no keeper is present, the lantern at the top is occasionally seen, shining across the waves. The light moves in deliberate sweeps, cutting through the fog as if searching for something or someone. Witnesses describe a combination of awe and unease, as the beacon illuminates the rocks and shoreline with purpose, yet no one appears to be operating it. Often, the light is accompanied by fleeting glimpses of figures near the cliff-edge, silhouetted shapes that appear humanoid but vanish without a trace when approached. Some theorize that these are the lingering spirits of past lighthouse keepers or sailors who perished near the cliffs, returning nightly to their posts or wandering the rocks in search of lost comrades. Historical context gives weight to these experiences. Marshall Point Lighthouse was first lit in 1832, serving as a critical navigational aid along Maine's rugged coastline. Keepers were often required to spend long nights in solitude, tending to the light, repairing equipment, and maintaining vigilance over the treacherous waters. Many lives were lost to storms, shipwrecks, and accidents on the slippery cliffs. And some local lore suggests that the lighthouse absorbs the memories of those who served and perished there. These echoes may manifest in the ghostly figures, sudden lights, and unexplained movements that modern visitors continue to report. The lighthouse, in a sense, seems to remember, replaying fragments of past tragedy and vigilance for anyone who dares to remain after dark. Visitors who linger into the night often experience the phenomena most intensely. The crashing waves grow louder and more erratic, mingling with the sounds of unseen footsteps along the cliffside. Shapes appear at the edge of the fog, pacing or standing still, watching the water or the path leading to the lighthouse. The sudden illumination of the cliffs often coincides with these apparitions, casting the rocks in stark relief and creating shifting shadows that seem to move independently. Whispered voices are sometimes carried on the wind in distinct, urgent, or plaintive, conveying a sense of presence without revealing any clear message. The experience can be disorienting, blending sight, sound, and emotion in a way that blurs the line between natural and supernatural. The jagged terrain enhances the sense of vulnerability. The rocks jut out at sharp angles, and narrow paths wind precariously along the cliffs. Sounds carry unpredictably, making it difficult to determine whether footsteps, rustling, or whispers originate nearby or far away. Visitors often report cold spots along the rocks or near the base of the lighthouse, areas where the air feels unnaturally heavy or chill despite the surrounding conditions. Some have described an almost tactile sensation of being followed, even when no one else is present. Shadows shift with the fog, disappearing the moment one attempts to look directly at them, further reinforcing the sense of unseen observation. Encounters with the shadowy figures are rarely threatening, though they are undeniably unsettling. Some visitors have reported seeing figures pause near the cliff's edge, as if observing the ocean, before dissolving into the fog. Others claim to see figures moving along the rocks, carrying invisible tools, performing silent actions, or pacing along the paths with purpose. The sudden lights on the cliffs, inexplicable yet deliberate, often accompany these figures, illuminating their movements for brief, ghostly moments. The combination of visual, auditory, and environmental phenomena creates an immersive experience that lingers long after leaving the lighthouse. Even in daylight, subtle signs of the lighthouse's haunted reputation persist. Shadows may linger where they should not, glimpses of figures appear at the edge of vision, and the atmosphere carries a weight that seems out of place in such a serene location. Visitors often leave with a profound impression that Marshall Point Lighthouse is more than a navigational aid. It is a sentinel of memory, holding the presence of those who once served and suffered along its cliffs. The lighthouse watches, waits, and perhaps even guides those who approach, echoing the dedication of keepers long gone. Marshall Point Lighthouse stands as a sentinel over both the Atlantic and the mysteries that cling to its rocky cliffs. Shadowy figures glide through fog, sudden lights illuminate rocks without explanation, and whispers drift through the night air. For those who remain until darkness falls, the lighthouse offers more than sweeping ocean views. It offers a direct encounter with the lingering presence of the past. Every flash of light across the cliffs, every movement in the fog, and every faint whisper serves as a reminder that some places retain memory, vigilance, and unresolved energy long after their human caretakers have gone. The Atlantic waves crash, the fog rolls, and the lighthouse continues to watch, guarding its cliffs and the stories embedded within them, ensuring that visitors never truly walk alone at Marshall Point. Owl's Head Lighthouse, perched on the rocky coast of Owl's Head, Maine, has long been a sentinel over the Atlantic, guiding vessels safely through the treacherous waters with its iconic beam. Yet, beyond its historical role, the lighthouse holds a reputation for the unexplained, drawing visitors intrigued by both its scenic beauty and eerie phenomena. Those who approach the lighthouse often report sudden cold gusts that sweep across the cliffs, carrying with them faint, indistinct whispers, as if the wind itself is speaking. Even when the tower is unoccupied, the light occasionally sweeps across the water, casting its beam far into the dark waves, as though operated by invisible hands. Arriving at Owl's Head, one is immediately aware of the lighthouse's isolation. Jagged rocks rise sharply from the surf, and the relentless roar of the ocean creates a natural rhythm that fills the senses. During dusk, the cliffs take on an ethereal quality. Mist rolls off the water, curling around the base of the lighthouse and the scattered outcroppings of stone. It is in this shifting fog that visitors most often notice movement, shadowy shapes glimpsed at the edge of sight, vanishing the instant one attempts to focus. The air itself feels different here, colder, heavier, tinged with the salt and brine of the sea, yet carrying something intangible that raises goosebumps along the skin. The lighthouse tower, tall and white against the horizon, becomes a focal point for these unexplained experiences. Despite the absence of keepers during off hours, the lantern's beam sometimes swings methodically across the ocean. Witnesses describe the light as deliberate, its movement precise and purposeful. Cutting through fog and darkness in wide, measured arcs, the beam occasionally illuminates rocks, sea foam, and distant vessels, moments that make one feel both seen and observed. Many speculate that the light is a manifestation of lingering duty, a spectral keeper continuing to guide ships as it did in life, unable to abandon its post even in death. Historical records provide context to these haunting occurrences. Owl's Head Lighthouse was first lit in 1825, a crucial navigational aid along Maine's rugged coast. Lighthouse keepers often faced long, solitary nights, tending the light through storms, snow, and darkness, always aware that a single lapse could lead to shipwreck and loss of life. Over the years, some keepers and local sailors perished in accidents or sudden storms, their lives claimed by the very waters they sought to safeguard. Many believe that these tragedies imbued the lighthouse and its surrounding cliffs with residual energy. The whispers carried by the wind and the light sweeping over the waves may be echoes of those who lived and died there, replaying their vigilance for anyone who dares to remain until nightfall. Visitors lingering into the evening frequently experience heightened phenomena. The wind carries the softest of voices, whispering in tones that are often indistinguishable but unmistakably human. Footsteps along the rocks are sometimes heard, approaching and receding with no visible source. Shadows move at the periphery of vision, darting between rocks or lingering near the edge of the cliffs, before vanishing into the fog. Sudden gusts of wind, colder than the surrounding air, brush against visitors unexpectedly, accompanied by a sense of presence that feels tangible yet unseen. Some report glimpsing figures standing near the lighthouse, staring out at the ocean before disappearing when approached. The environment amplifies the sense of the supernatural. Jagged cliffs, winding paths, and uneven rocks carry sound unpredictably, making distant noises seem near and near ones seem far away. The fog distorts vision, casting ordinary shapes into forms that appear humanoid. Vegetation along the cliff edges sways as if moved by invisible hands, and the rhythmic crash of the waves blends with the whispers and footsteps, creating an atmosphere where the natural and the spectral merge seamlessly. Visitors describe the feeling of being watched, an unshakable awareness that someone or something is tracking every step, lingering just beyond sight. Even during daylight hours, Owl's Head Lighthouse maintains an aura of quiet vigilance. Shadows may linger where they should not. Subtle movements at the periphery of vision suggest unseen figures, and the air carries an almost imperceptible charge, as if alive with memory. The occasional sweep of the beacon during daytime, or when no keeper is present, reinforces the sense that the lighthouse itself is a living entity, maintaining its purpose, guiding, and observing. It is as if the tower absorbs the dedication and duty of past keepers and continues their vigilance for anyone nearby. Visitors leave Owl's Head with a sense of awe and unease. The lighthouse is more than a navigational landmark. It is a repository of memory, duty, and unresolved presence. The beams sweeping across the water, the whispers in the wind, the fleeting figures near the cliffs all serve as reminders that the lighthouse retains the energy of those who once inhabited it. It watches, waits, and perhaps even guides, ensuring that no one truly walks alone along the rocky coast. Owl's Head Lighthouse stands as a sentinel over the Atlantic and the mysteries that linger among its cliffs. The light sweeps across the waves, even when unattended. Shadowy figures appear and vanish near the rocks, and whispers echo on the wind. For those who remain until darkness falls, the lighthouse offers more than panoramic views. It offers an encounter with the lingering presence of the past. Every movement in the fog, every sudden gust of cold air, and every faint whisper serves as a reminder that some places retain the memory, vigilance, and energy of those who once called them home. The cliffs, the ocean, and the lighthouse itself continue to watch, ensuring that visitors are never truly alone at Owl's Head. Spring Point Ledge Lighthouse, situated on the rugged coastline of South Portland, Maine, has long guided ships safely through the treacherous waters at the mouth of the Portland Harbor. Its white tower and attached keeper's house, though small in comparison to some lighthouses, stand as a sentinel against the Atlantic waves, witnessing centuries of maritime traffic. Yet, beyond its historical significance and picturesque scenery, the lighthouse has earned a reputation for the unexplained. Visitors and locals alike have reported phantom footsteps echoing along the cliffside, shadows flitting near jagged rocks, and a persistent feeling of being watched. These inexplicable occurrences suggest that Spring Point Ledge Lighthouse holds more than maritime history. It harbors the lingering presence of the past, manifesting in subtle, eerie ways for anyone who approaches after dark. Arriving at Spring Point, the first sensation is the relentless roar of the Atlantic. Waves crash against jagged rocks, sending spray into the air and filling the narrow path leading to the lighthouse with the briny scent of salt water. The terrain is rugged and uneven, with rocks jutting sharply from the cliffs, creating natural sound amplifiers. Footsteps along the cliffside can sound both near and far, sometimes mimicking the pace of a solitary visitor, and other times moving independently. echoing unnervingly across the rocks. Many who visit during twilight report hearing these phantom footsteps long before they spot any figures. The sounds intensifying as darkness falls and the wind carries them across the fog-draped cliffs. The lighthouse itself, with its bright white tower and small lantern room, becomes a focal point for supernatural reports. Even on nights when no keeper is present, the tower seems alive with energy. Shadows appear near the base or along the rocky outcroppings, often gliding silently as if they have a purpose. Witnesses describe these forms as humanoid, but indistinct, vanishing instantly when approached. Some figures seem to pace near the edge of the cliffs, staring out over the water before dissolving into the mist. Others appear to move along the rocks in patterns that suggest they are tending to invisible tasks, as if carrying out the routines of a life once lived at the lighthouse. The lighthouse's history provides context for these phenomena. Spring Point Ledge was first illuminated in 1897 to warn ships of the hazardous ledges and rocks surrounding the harbor entrance. Keepers worked tirelessly, often in isolation, responsible for maintaining the light through storms, fog, and freezing temperatures. Lives were lost during particularly violent storms, either to the Atlantic or to accidents along the treacherous cliffs. Some believe that these tragic events left residual energy, which manifests as the echoes, shadows, and footsteps reported by modern visitors. The lighthouse, in a sense, has absorbed the dedication, vigilance, and sorrow of those who served there, replaying fragments of the past for anyone who remains after dark. Visitors who linger into the evening often report the phenomena with greater intensity. The fog thickens, curling around the rocks and lighthouse, concealing movements and shaping the atmosphere into one of eerie anticipation. Phantom footsteps can be heard approaching from different directions, sometimes seeming to circle the visitor before fading abruptly. Shadows flit at the edge of sight, appearing to pause when observed, but vanishing the moment one tries to look directly. Cold gusts of wind accompany these experiences, brushing against the skin and carrying faint, unintelligible whispers, creating the impression that the cliffs themselves are alive with unseen observers. The combination of natural and supernatural elements makes Spring Point Ledge especially disorienting. The uneven rocks, cliffside paths, and swirling fog create optical illusions, making ordinary shapes appear humanoid. The sounds of waves and wind intermingle with the echoes of phantom footsteps and whispers, blurring the line between reality and perception. Visitors often feel the presence of someone just behind them, prompting an instinctive urge to turn, only to find the path empty. The lighthouse, with its sudden lights or the reflection of the moon off the lantern room, adds to this effect, casting long, shifting shadows across the rocks and enhancing the sense of mystery. Even during daylight, subtle signs of the lighthouse's haunted nature remain. Shadows sometimes linger where they should not, and figures may be glimpsed briefly at the cliff edge or near the rocks, dissolving before anyone can approach. The air carries a distinct energy, a quiet tension that can be felt even in the absence of visible phenomena. Many visitors leave with the impression that the lighthouse is more than a navigational aid. It is a sentinel of memory, preserving the presence of those who once maintained its light and the sailors who depended upon it. The lighthouse continues to serve as a guardian over the harbor, yet it also serves as a portal into the past. Phantom footsteps echo, shadows glide among the rocks, and faint whispers drift on the wind, each reminding visitors that some places retain memory and presence long after the humans who once occupied them have gone. For those who remain until nightfall, Spring Point Ledge Lighthouse offers more than a view of the Atlantic. It provides a direct encounter with the lingering vigilance of the past. Every movement in the fog, every gust of cold wind, and every fleeting shadow serves as a reminder that the lighthouse is never truly empty, that it watches, waits, and silently guides those who venture close enough to feel its presence. Spring Point Ledge Lighthouse stands as both a historical beacon and a silent witness to the mysteries of the Maine coast. Its shadowy figures, unexplained lights, and phantom footsteps ensure that visitors experience more than natural beauty. They step into a realm where past and present converge, where the cliffs, rocks, and tower hold on to the energy of lives lived and lost. The Atlantic waves crash, the fog rolls, and the lighthouse continues its watch, assuring that no one truly walks alone along its rugged paths. Ram Island Lighthouse, standing resolutely off the rocky coast of Boothbay Harbor, Maine, has long guided vessels safely through the treacherous waters with its unwavering beacon. Built in the 19th century, the lighthouse has witnessed countless storms, shipwrecks, and fog-laden nights. Yet, beyond its historical importance, Ram Island has earned a reputation for the unexplained. Visitors and locals alike report seeing ghostly figures along the cliff edge at dusk, shadows that appear only briefly before vanishing into the fog. Even when the tower is unoccupied, lights flash unexpectedly from the lantern room, as though operated by unseen hands, signaling two vessels that long since have sailed or two spirits bound to the island itself. Approaching Ram Island, the first sensation is the harsh, salty wind sweeping off the Atlantic. Jagged rocks rise sharply from the water, forming natural cliffs that guard the lighthouse and amplify every sound. The cries of seabirds, the crash of waves against the rocks, and the distant foghorns blend into an atmosphere both wild and unsettling. Visitors frequently report that the air grows unnaturally cold as evening approaches, with sudden gusts brushing against their skin, carrying the faintest whisper of voices. The shadows along the cliff edge appear in these moments, just at the limit of vision, moving with a deliberate grace before dissolving into the mist. The lighthouse itself, with its stark white tower and attached keeper's house, becomes the focal point for the most unusual experiences. Even during hours when no keeper is present, the lantern sometimes bursts into light, flashing across the harbor with a steady rhythm that mimics the work of a dedicated hand. Witnesses describe these flashes as deliberate, almost urgent, casting long reflections on the waves below. Some speculate that the light is a continuation of the keeper's duty, a spectral effort to maintain vigilance for any ship passing through the dangerous waters. Others believe the flashes are the work of lingering spirits, echoing the patterns of those who once lived and labored on the island, unable to abandon their post. The history of Ram Island Lighthouse provides insight into the haunting reports. First illuminated in 1836, the lighthouse was essential for the safety of Boothbay Harbor, one of Maine's busiest shipping ports. Keepers endured isolation, storms, and the constant threat of shipwreck, often living in solitude for weeks at a time. Lives were lost to both the unforgiving ocean and the unforgiving conditions on the cliffs. Some believe that these tragedies left residual energy within the lighthouse and along the surrounding rocks, manifesting in the phantom figures glimpsed at dusk and the sudden flashes of light from the tower. Each occurrence serves as a reminder that the island retains the memory of those who served, protecting it long after death. Visitors lingering into the evening often describe heightened phenomena. As the sun dips below the horizon, the cliffs become shrouded in fog, amplifying every shadow and sound. Phantom figures appear along the rocky edge, standing as if gazing out over the water or performing invisible tasks, only to vanish when approached. The lights in the tower flash unpredictably, sometimes illuminating the mist in brief, surreal bursts. Cold gusts brush against observers, accompanied by faint whispers that rise and fall with the wind, almost as if the island itself is communicating, offering guidance or warning to those who venture too close. The interaction of natural and supernatural elements enhances the disorienting atmosphere. Waves crash unpredictably against the jagged rocks, fog obscures sightlines, and the cliffs create echoes that confuse the direction of sound. Shadows dart across the cliffs or along the edges of the lighthouse, appearing where no human could stand. The flashing light creates illusions of movement, and the wind seems to carry voices from unseen mouths. Visitors often feel the sensation of being followed, as though invisible presences are moving alongside them, vanishing whenever they attempt to turn and confront what they sense. Even during daylight, the island exudes an otherworldly energy. Figures are sometimes glimpsed at the cliff edge or near the base of the tower, disappearing when observed directly. The lighthouse, though empty of living keepers at times, seems alive with memory, its light and the surrounding cliffs maintaining the energy of those who once tended the beacon. Many visitors leave with a sense that the lighthouse watches, silently guiding and observing, a sentinel not just of maritime safety but of lingering presence. The combination of historical significance and unexplained activity makes Ram Island Lighthouse a place where the past and present converge. Phantom figures, sudden lights, and whispers carried on the wind serve as a constant reminder of the lives lived and lost here. The cliffs, rocks, and lighthouse are infused with memory, creating an environment where visitors cannot help but feel the presence of those who once called the island home. Each gust of wind, each flash of light from the tower, and each fleeting shadow acts as a testament to the enduring vigilance of both the living and the long departed. Ram Island Lighthouse stands as a beacon in every sense, a guide for the living and a guardian of memory. Rockland Breakwater Lighthouse, stretching defiantly into the cold waters of Penobscot Bay in Rockland, Maine, has long served as a guiding beacon for ships navigating the rocky coastline. Constructed in the late 19th century, the lighthouse sits at the end of a long breakwater, a structure designed to protect the harbor from the Atlantic's unpredictable waves. While its history is steeped in maritime significance, the lighthouse has earned a reputation for more spectral phenomena. Visitors and locals alike report hearing cries for help echoing over the waves, witnessing the light move erratically, and seeing shadowy figures pacing the breakwater, appearing and disappearing with no explanation. These occurrences have fostered an eerie atmosphere, one where the past and present seem to intertwine along the stone path and into the bay. The breakwater itself is both a marvel and a challenge for anyone attempting to traverse it. The long stretch of rocks juts out into the Atlantic, battered continually by waves that pound the stone, spraying water into the air and drenching visitors in the sea's brine. The wind off the bay is relentless, whipping across the breakwater and creating natural sound amplifiers. Even when the sun is shining, the stones are slippery and uneven, making the visitor acutely aware of their isolation. At night, or during foggy conditions, the experience transforms. Footsteps echo unnaturally across the breakwater, mingling with the crashing surf, creating an auditory illusion that other presences are nearby. It is in these conditions that the lighthouse seems to come alive, a silent sentinel both watching over the harbor and drawing the attention of those who dare to walk the stone path. Reports of cries for help are among the most chilling experiences at Rockland Breakwater. Many visitors describe hearing a faint, pleading voice coming from the direction of the waves. The sounds are often unintelligible, fragmented, like someone calling out just beyond comprehension. Some have interpreted the cries as remnants of the countless sailors and fishermen who perished in storms near the rocky coast, their voices echoing across the water centuries later. Others suggest that the lighthouse itself carries the weight of these tragedies, its structure resonating with the memories of lives lost to the unforgiving Atlantic. Regardless of the source, the cries create a deep unease, especially when paired with the isolation of the breakwater and the darkness of night. The lighthouse's beacon also exhibits unusual behavior. Witnesses have reported the light moving erratically, sweeping across the horizon when no keeper is present, flickering in patterns that do not align with its usual rotation. Some say the light pulses more rapidly at times, illuminating the breakwater in bursts that reveal shadowy figures pacing along the stones. These figures are indistinct, sometimes appearing humanoid, but dissolving into mist or darkness the instant they are approached. Their movements are deliberate, suggesting purpose or intent, yet their forms remain impossible to grasp. Many who witness these apparitions describe an overwhelming feeling of being observed, a sense that the figures are aware of the living and are deliberately interacting with them in a way that defies explanation. The history of Rockland Breakwater Lighthouse provides some context for the unusual activity. Built in 1888 to aid the growing maritime traffic into Rockland Harbor, the breakwater and its lighthouse were the scene of countless rescues and tragedies. Keepers lived on site for extended periods, enduring isolation, storms, and the constant danger posed by the Atlantic waves. Lives were lost both to maritime accidents and the falls along the jagged rocks. Some suggest that the spirits of these keepers, sailors, and fishermen linger, their presence echoing in the cries, shadows, and flickering lights. The lighthouse, in this sense, acts as a vessel for history, holding on to the energy of those who dedicated or lost their lives in service to the harbor and its vessels. Visitors who linger into the evening describe the phenomena with increasing intensity. The fog often rolls in from the Atlantic, obscuring vision and muffling sound, yet amplifying the sense of presence. Phantom footsteps can be heard, approaching from different directions, sometimes circling the visitor or moving parallel along the breakwater. Shadowy forms appear near the water's edge, pacing the stones or standing motionless while gazing out at the waves. The light from the lighthouse pulses or swings unexpectedly, revealing figures that vanish as quickly as they are glimpsed. Cold gusts of wind accompany these experiences, carrying fragmented whispers or muffled cries, creating the impression that the entire breakwater is alive with memory and unseen activity. The interplay between natural and supernatural elements heightens the disorienting atmosphere. Waves crash unpredictably, fog obscures sight lines, and the uneven stones create optical illusions, making ordinary shapes appear humanoid. Shadows dart across the breakwater, sometimes in perfect alignment with human movement and sometimes independently. The erratic light casts long, shifting silhouettes, while the wind carries sounds that seem to come from multiple directions simultaneously. Visitors often feel a presence just behind them or at the edge of their vision, vanishing when they attempt to confront it, leaving a lingering sense of unease that persists even after leaving the breakwater. Even in daylight, subtle signs of the lighthouse's haunted nature persist. Shadows occasionally appear along the breakwater or near the lighthouse foundation, vanishing upon approach. Cold spots form near certain stones, and fragments of sound whispers, rustling, or faint cries linger in the air. The lighthouse, though unmanned at times, retains a sense of vigilance, a presence that seems aware of those who traverse the breakwater and the vessels moving in the harbor. Visitors leave with the realization that the lighthouse is more than a navigational aid. It is a keeper of memory, holding on to the past in ways both subtle and startling. Rockland Breakwater Lighthouse remains both a historical guide and a mysterious sentinel. The cries over the waves, the erratic light, and the shadowy figures create an environment where history and the supernatural converge. Every gust of wind, every flash of the lighthouse, and every fleeting shadow serves as a reminder that the breakwater is never truly empty, that the spirits of keepers, sailors, and lost travelers persist, silently observing and interacting with those who dare to walk its stones after dark. The lighthouse continues to watch over the harbor, ensuring that visitors experience more than natural beauty. They witness a living history, an enduring presence, and the unexplainable mysteries of the Maine coast. As evening approaches, the atmosphere transforms entirely. Fog often rolls in from the Atlantic, blanketing the cliffs in a thick, silvery haze that seems to soften the edges of reality. Within this fog, figures have been reported pacing along the cliff tops, visible just long enough to provoke a jolt of unease before vanishing into the mist. The lighthouse tower is the focal point for many of the island's most inexplicable phenomena. Even when unoccupied, lights often shine from the lantern room, moving in patterns that do not align with the mechanical rotation of the beacon. Witnesses describe bursts of illumination sweeping across the cliffs or flickering intermittently, illuminating the rocks and pathways below in sudden, surreal flashes. Some believe these lights are the lingering energy of keepers long gone, continuing their watch over the Atlantic waters. Others suggest a light signal unseen presences moving within the tower or along the cliff edge, performing tasks invisible to the living. Whatever the cause, the effect is undeniably haunting, leaving observers with the sense that the lighthouse is far more than a navigational aid. It is a vessel for memory, history, and lingering spirits. The cries of distant foghorns add another layer to the island's eerie atmosphere. Unlike the steady, regulated blasts used to guide ships, these sounds often carry an unnatural cadence, sometimes echoing as though bouncing off cliffs that should not reflect sound in that manner. Visitors report hearing multiple horns, their origins impossible to trace, and notes that seem to call out specific names or mimic the rhythm of past maritime accidents. The cries are often accompanied by sudden gusts of icy wind, as if the island itself breathes with an unseen life. Some claim that the horns are warnings, not for the living, but for the spirits bound to the cliffs, and the lighthouse reminders of past tragedies and the dangers that continue to haunt the rocks below. Historical records provide context for the persistent hauntings. Seguin Island Lighthouse was first illuminated in 1795, serving as a crucial guide for mariners navigating the perilous waters near Cape Elizabeth. Keepers endured isolation, storms, and long hours of vigilance, maintaining the light to prevent countless shipwrecks. Lives were often lost to the relentless Atlantic, either in maritime disasters or on the jagged cliffs themselves. The lighthouse keeper's dedication, combined with the numerous tragedies, is thought to have left residual energy within the tower and across the island. These energies manifest in the pacing figures, unexplained lights, and disembodied foghorns that visitors continue to report. Visitors who linger until dusk describe the phenomena with heightened intensity. Shadows appear along the cliff edge, pacing deliberately as though tracing paths long familiar to them. The lights in the tower pulse or move without apparent cause, sometimes casting distorted, elongated shadows across the rocks. Ghostly figures have been seen moving along the island pathways, vanishing when approached, leaving an unsettling sense of being watched. Cold drafts sweep across the cliffs, carrying whispers that seem to rise and fall with the wind, mingling with the sounds of the Atlantic waves to create a symphony of unease. Every element, the fog, the wind, the cliffs, the water, and the lighthouse itself, works in concert to create an environment where reality and memory intertwine. The interplay between natural and supernatural elements is particularly disorienting. The fog obscures sightlines, waves crash unpredictably against the rocks, and shadows appear in ways that defy logical explanation. The lighthouse's flickering light exaggerates movements, making the cliffs appear populated with fleeting forms that vanish as soon as they are observed. Wind carries sounds that seem to come from multiple directions at once, while footsteps, whispers, and distant cries suggest the presence of others, though no one else is visible. Visitors often feel a presence behind them, moving in synchrony with their steps, disappearing the instant they turn to confront it. The experience is immersive, leaving a lasting impression that lingers long after leaving the island. Even in daylight, Seguin Island retains its spectral energy. Figures are sometimes glimpsed near the cliff edges or around the base of the lighthouse, vanishing when approached. Cold spots form unexpectedly, and faint whispers ride the sea breeze. The light in the tower occasionally flashes without power, casting reflections that seem to guide or warn. The island's history, combined with its dramatic natural features, ensures that both the lighthouse and the surrounding cliffs remain a place where the past is never fully gone, where the energy of lost keepers, sailors, and unseen presences continues to linger. Sightings Island Lighthouse stands as more than a beacon for sailors. It is a sentinel of memory and mystery, ghostly figures pacing the cliffs, unexplained lights from the tower, and the unnatural echoes of distant foghorns create an experience where visitors are confronted with the weight of history and the presence of lingering spirits. Every gust of wind, every flicker of light, and every shadow along the cliff edge is a reminder that the lighthouse watches silently, preserving the stories of those who once called it home and those who continue to roam its fog-shrouded cliffs. For anyone who ventures to Sightings Island, the lighthouse offers not only a glimpse into maritime history, but also a haunting encounter with the unknown, a place where the boundary between the living and the unseen is blurred by the sea, the fog, and the enduring presence of the past. Whitehead Lighthouse, perched on a rugged outcrop off the coast of St. George, Maine, has long been a beacon for sailors navigating the turbulent waters of the Atlantic. Built in the mid-19th century, it stands as one of the most isolated and weather-beaten lighthouses in the region, its walls battered by storms, and its lantern keeping watch over treacherous cliffs and hidden shoals. Though the lighthouse has long guided countless vessels safely to shore, it has gained a reputation among visitors and locals for something far more unsettling. Shadowy figures are frequently reported near the tower, unexplained lights shine from the lantern room, and the sound of footsteps echoes across the rocks even when the island is deserted. Approaching Whitehead Lighthouse, the first sensation is one of utter isolation. The rocky cliffs rise abruptly from the sea, their jagged edges worn by centuries of wind and waves. Even during daylight, the lighthouse seems to exist in its own world, set apart from the mainland by distance and storm-swept seas. Visitors often describe a sensation of being watched as they traverse the uneven paths leading to the tower, a prickling awareness that unseen eyes follow every movement. By evening, the island transforms entirely. Fog frequently rolls in from the Atlantic, blanketing the cliffs and rocks in a dense, silvery mist. Within this fog, figures have been glimpsed pacing along the cliff edges, visible for only a moment before disappearing into the haze, leaving a chill that lingers long after the sighting. The tower itself is a focal point of the lighthouse's spectral activity. Even when unoccupied, lights frequently shine from the lantern room, moving in ways that defy explanation. Witnesses describe bursts of illumination sweeping across the cliffs or flickering intermittently, casting eerie reflections on the rocks below. Some speculate these lights are the remnants of past keepers, performing their eternal duties long after death. Others suggest that the lights are drawn by the presence of visitors, a way for the unseen to interact or guide those who venture too close. Whatever the cause, the effect is unmistakably haunting, leaving observers with the sense that the lighthouse is more than a navigational. It is a conduit for memory, history, and lingering spirits. The sounds of Whitehead Lighthouse are as chilling as its visual phenomena. Footsteps often echo across the rocky cliffs, seemingly following visitors along the paths to the tower. These steps appear to come from no one, their cadence irregular, sometimes matching the rhythm of a person's own steps, other times lagging behind or racing ahead. Visitors have reported hearing muffled voices carried on the wind, whispers that rise and fall, repeating fragments of names or phrases that vanish before they can be fully understood. The wind, crashing waves, and the natural acoustics of the cliffs combine to create an environment where it is impossible to distinguish the living from the spectral, leaving guests in a constant state of heightened awareness. Historical accounts offer insight into the lighthouse's unsettling reputation. Whitehead Lighthouse was built during a time when maritime travel along the Maine coast was both essential and perilous. Keepers endured long periods of isolation, often battling fierce storms and icy winds to maintain the light. Several tragic accidents occurred near the cliffs, claiming lives both at sea and on land. The combination of isolation, human toil, and repeated tragedy is thought to have left residual energy in the lighthouse and across the surrounding cliffs. This energy manifests in the pacing figures, unexplained lights, and phantom footsteps reported by visitors for generations. Visitors who remain until dusk often experience the island's haunting phenomena in full force. Shadows appear along the cliff edges, moving with deliberate purpose, as if retracing paths long familiar to them. Lights flash from the lantern room, sometimes rotating or pulsing without the presence of a keeper. Figures are seen standing silently near the rocks, vanishing when approached, leaving an intense awareness of being observed. Cold gusts of wind sweep across the cliffs, carrying whispered fragments of speech or cries that seem to echo from the very stones themselves. Every sound, shadow, and movement creates a sense of being caught between worlds, where the present is inextricably linked to the past. The isolation of Whitehead Lighthouse enhances the intensity of these experiences. Visitors often note that even in daylight, ghostly figures can be glimpsed along the paths or near the cliffs, disappearing instantly when approached. Cold spots appear unexpectedly, and lights in the lantern room flash without explanation. The lighthouse, standing sentinel over centuries of maritime history, becomes a place where human presence is acutely felt, and yet seemingly irrelevant, overshadowed by lingering spirits who remain bound to the island and the sea. The natural environment works in tandem with the supernatural. Waves crash unpredictably against the rocks, fog obscures visibility, and shadows appear to stretch and twist independently of the sun or moonlight. Sounds carry across the cliffs in ways that defy natural explanation, from footsteps and whispers to distant cries. Visitors report feeling unseen hands brush against their shoulders, or an inexplicable sensation of being guided or watched along the jagged paths. The combination of history, isolation, and unexplained activity ensures that Whitehead Lighthouse is more than a site of maritime importance. It is a place where the boundary between the living and the unseen is tenuous at best. Whitehead Lighthouse is a testament to the power of history and isolation. Ghostly figures pacing the cliffs, lights from the unoccupied lantern room, and footsteps echoing across the rocks create an experience where visitors feel the weight of both memory and presence. The lighthouse stands as a sentinel, not just for the ships navigating Maine's treacherous waters, but for the spirits who linger along the cliffs, bound to the past and watching silently over the Atlantic. Every gust of wind, flicker of light, and shadow on the rocks serves as a reminder that the lighthouse, though grounded in reality, remains a place where the supernatural and the natural coexist, creating an unforgettable encounter for anyone brave enough to venture to its cliffs. Matinicus Rock Lighthouse stands as one of Maine's most isolated beacons, perched on a rocky outcrop far off the coast, surrounded by the endless expanse of the Atlantic Ocean. Built in the 19th century, it has guided countless vessels through treacherous waters, warning sailors of hidden shoals and jagged cliffs. Its remoteness, however, has also given rise to a different kind of legend. Visitors and locals alike have long reported eerie phenomena at the lighthouse. The beacon sweeps across the cliffs on foggy nights even when no keeper is present. Whispers echo from the rocks, and cries drift over the water, chilling anyone who dares to approach the island after dusk. Reaching Matinicus Rock is no simple task. Visitors must take a small boat through turbulent seas, the journey itself testing nerves with every wave that crashes against the hull. As the island draws near, the lighthouse emerges from the mist like a sentinel of another world. Even during daylight, the air feels different, heavier, almost vibrating with the energy of a place where human history and natural forces collide. The rocks around the lighthouse are jagged and uneven, worn by centuries of relentless tides, and they are often shrouded in fog, giving the landscape an otherworldly quality. The lighthouse tower dominates the island, its white walls weathered by salt and wind. Visitors frequently report seeing the beacon sweep across the cliffs at night, even when the lighthouse is abandoned. The light rotates and glows with an intensity that seems almost deliberate, casting long shadows across the rocks below. Many believe the light is a remnant of past keepers, their dedication so enduring that it manifests even in their absence. Others suggest a more supernatural explanation, that unseen forces used a beacon to communicate, to warn, or perhaps to claim the attention of anyone venturing too close. The effect is undeniable. Those who witness the light in motion describe a sensation of being both observed and guided, as though the lighthouse itself is aware of their presence. Sounds on Matinicus Rock are as unsettling as the visual phenomena. Whispers rise unexpectedly from the cliffs, echoing as if the rocks themselves are speaking. These whispers are often indecipherable, but occasionally fragments of names or phrases become clear, carried by the wind in a way that seems intentional. Visitors have also reported hearing cries emanating from the water or from deep within the rocky cliffs, haunting wails that rise and fall like the pulse of the sea. The combination of wind, waves, and echoing stone creates an auditory experience that blurs the line between natural and supernatural. Even the most rational visitors find themselves questioning the source of these sounds, unable to shake the feeling that the island itself is alive with memory and presence. The history of Matinicus Rock Lighthouse adds weight to its haunted reputation. Keepers endured long periods of isolation, often facing fierce storms, freezing winds, and relentless fog. Many accounts tell of accidents and near tragedies, both at sea and on the island itself, where lives were claimed by the ocean or the treacherous cliffs. It is said that the isolation and hardship left an indelible mark, the echoes of human effort, fear, and loss lingering in the air and imprinting themselves on the rocks and tower. Locals claim that those who visit the lighthouse are more sensitive to these echoes, able to perceive the subtle movements, sounds, and presences that have been accumulating for generations. Visitors who remain until dusk often experience the full range of the lighthouse's strange phenomena. Shadows appear to move along the jagged cliffs, sometimes visible at the edge of the fog, sometimes gliding closer only to vanish when approached. The beacon flashes and sweeps across the rocks, its movements seemingly synchronized with the shifting shadows. Whispered words rise from unseen mouths, mixing with the cries carried by the waves, creating an almost musical cadence of sound that is both beautiful and terrifying. Cold gusts of wind sweep over visitors without warning, sending shivers down their spines and enhancing the sense that they are not alone on the island. The combination of isolation, history, and natural elements makes Matinicus Rock Lighthouse an environment where perception itself seems unreliable. The fog alters distances and shapes, the rocks reflect and distort sounds, and the light from the beacon plays tricks on the eyes. Even so, repeated accounts by visitors describe phenomena that cannot easily be dismissed. Lights moving without explanation, figures glimpsed among the rocks, whispers that call names or repeat fragments of long-forgotten phrases. Many describe an overwhelming feeling of being watched, guided, or studied by presences unseen, their attention both protective and unsettling. Over the years, the lighthouse has become a place where the natural and supernatural intertwine. The Atlantic's waves crash relentlessly against the cliffs, fog swirls unpredictably, and the wind carries whispers and cries across the island. Shadows appear and vanish, figures move with deliberate intent, and the beacon sweeps across the rocks without the guidance of a keeper. Visitors often leave with an indelible impression of the lighthouse, unable to forget the strange mix of isolation, history, and spectral activity that defines Matinicus Rock. It is a place where time seems to stretch, where the boundary between the living and the unseen blurs, and where anyone who dares to linger may feel the weight of countless presences silently watching, whispering, and moving among the rocks and fog. Matinicus Rock Lighthouse stands as a sentinel, not just for sailors navigating the treacherous Atlantic, but for the lingering spirits of keepers and lost souls drawn to the cliffs over the decades. Every flash of light, every whisper, and every movement across the rocks serves as a reminder that this remote lighthouse is a place where history and the supernatural coexist, where the ordinary and the extraordinary are inseparably intertwined, and where the fog, the wind, and the sea carry stories that refuse to fade with time. Built over a century ago, it was designed to guide ships safely through the perilous waters along Maine's coastline. Its light cutting through fog, wind, and storm with unwavering precision. Visitors speak of figures appearing along the cliffs, vanishing when approached, and phantom lights that illuminate the rocks below, with no apparent source. But a place where the line between the living and the unseen blurs, where history, tragedy, and the supernatural converge. Accessing Saddleback Ledge is a challenge. The cliffs rise sharply from the ocean, jagged and uneven, and the waters below are notorious for treacherous currents. Approaching the lighthouse requires a careful climb or a small boat, often at the mercy of the Atlantic's waves. Even from a distance, the lighthouse commands attention. Its stark white walls and tall towers seem almost ethereal when mist drifts across the cliffs, and the sound of waves crashing against the rocks creates an unsettling rhythm that intensifies as visitors draw closer. Those who linger often report feeling a weight in the air, a palpable sense of being observed by forces they cannot see. Once on the island, the lighthouse itself is both majestic and unsettling. Its interior is a labyrinth of narrow staircases, stone floors, and ancient woodwork that creaks underfoot. The beacon, which still functions to this day, is a source of both guidance and fear. Many visitors recount seeing it flash and sweep across the cliffs on foggy nights. Even when the lighthouse is unattended, the light illuminates the jagged rocks below, creating sharp, shifting shadows that seem to move independently, as if the cliffs themselves are alive. Some claim the movements of the light synchronize with the shadows, producing shapes that resemble figures pacing along the edges or standing at impossible angles, vanishing the moment they are confronted. The cliffs around the lighthouse are the epicenter of its most unsettling phenomena. Figures, often indistinct at first, appear along the rocky edges. They move with deliberate intent, sometimes pacing slowly, sometimes standing still as though watching the ocean. Visitors who attempt to approach them find the shapes dissipating into the fog, leaving no trace of their presence. The figures are rarely described in detail. Most appear as shadowy silhouettes, lacking discernible features, yet their presence evokes a profound sense of unease. The experience is disorienting, leaving an impression of a world where natural laws are suspended and the cliffs themselves conceal secrets that are never fully revealed. In addition to the visual phenomena, sounds play a crucial role in the lighthouse's haunting reputation. Visitors often describe faint whispers carried on the wind, rising unexpectedly and fading just as quickly. Even experienced sailors and lighthouse historians, familiar with the island's natural acoustics, find these sounds inexplicable. The history of Saddleback Ledge Lighthouse adds weight to its spectral reputation. Keepers endured long periods of isolation, often battling fierce storms, freezing winds, and relentless fog. Stories of shipwrecks and maritime tragedies are interwoven with accounts of accidents on the cliffs themselves. Locals claim that the combination of hardship, death, and the solitude of the lighthouse created a lingering energy, a presence that persists long after the keepers and visitors have departed. Some suggest that the figures seen along the cliffs are echoes of past keepers, sailors lost at sea, or spirits drawn to the light, eternally tied to the jagged rocks and the rhythm of the ocean. Figures appear, vanish, and reappear, often synchronized with the sudden gusts of wind or the crash of waves. Whispers rise and fall with the tide. Cold gusts sweep across exposed skin, and a sense of being watched pervades every movement. The experience is both terrifying and mesmerizing, leaving an indelible mark on those who witness it. Saddleback Ledge Lighthouse is more than a historic maritime structure. It is a place where isolation, history, and the supernatural converge. Cape Porpoise Lighthouse in Kennebunkport stands as both a beacon for sailors and a sentinel of mystery. Built to guide ships safely through Maine's rugged coastline, it has served its practical purpose for centuries, yet its reputation extends far beyond navigation. Locals and visitors alike have long whispered of ghostly phenomena surrounding the lighthouse. The light itself, some claim, turns on and off without explanation, sweeping across the cliff and sea even when no keeper is present. Shadowy figures are often glimpsed near the cliff edge, moving with purpose yet vanishing when approached. The lighthouse, perched atop jagged rocks and overlooking the Atlantic's relentless waves, has become a place where the natural and supernatural intersect in ways that defy explanation. The approach to Cape Porpoise is both beautiful and foreboding. The cliff rises sharply from the churning water below, and the surrounding terrain is rugged, with dense shrubbery and uneven paths that wind precariously close to the ocean. Visitors often describe a feeling of being watched long before they reach the lighthouse. The air carries a chill, even on warm days, and sudden gusts of wind sweep across the rocks with unnatural intensity. These gusts seem to carry whispers, fragments of words or names, so faint they are almost indistinguishable from the ocean-esque roar. Those who linger near the edge of the cliff often report glimpses of figures standing silently, only to disappear into the fog or darkness when one tries to approach. Inside the lighthouse, the history of solitude and isolation seems almost tangible. The spiral staircases, narrow hallways, and creaking wooden floors convey a sense of age and endurance. The beacon itself, still functional, has a peculiar habit of activating seemingly on its own. Visitors have reported seeing the light flash or sweep across the ocean when the structure is empty, its rotation perfectly timed as if responding to unseen commands. Sometimes, the light flickers rapidly, casting shadows across the walls and cliffs that appear to take on a life of their own. It is in these moments that many feel the presence of the lighthouse's unseen observers, figures who may be echoes of past keepers or visitors, or spirits drawn inexplicably to the cliffside. The cliffs surrounding Cape Porpoise Lighthouse are the stage for the most haunting experiences. Figures, often described as dark silhouettes, are glimpsed pacing near the precipice. They move with deliberate intent, occasionally stopping to peer out over the water. Yet, when approached, they dissolve into the fog or simply vanish, leaving no trace behind. Visitors have recounted feeling a presence pressing close, a sensation of being followed even when no one is visible. The movement of shadows along the rocks seems almost choreographed, with forms appearing in one spot only to vanish and reappear elsewhere. This strange choreography, combined with the unpredictable flickering of the beacon, creates a sense of disorientation and unease for those who brave the cliffs at night. Sounds at Cape Porpoise are equally unsettling. The waves crashing below mix with phantom footsteps on the rocks and faint, indecipherable whispers that drift across the cliff. At times, the whispers seem to repeat names or short phrases, though their origin is never clear. Some visitors report hearing cries of distress, echoing against the rocks in a manner that defies natural acoustics. Even those familiar with the natural rhythm of the ocean find these auditory experiences difficult to explain. The combination of sounds, the roar of the sea, the whistle of the wind, the footsteps, and the whispers creates an environment where reality and imagination blur, heightening the sense of supernatural presence. Local lore adds to the lighthouse's eerie reputation. Keepers of Cape Porpoise often worked in isolation for long stretches, enduring storms, fog, and harsh winds. Over the years, tales of shipwrecks, lost sailors, and tragic accidents on the cliffs have become intertwined with reports of ghostly sightings. Some believe that the shadowy figures represent the spirits of those who perished at sea, drawn to the lighthouse's beacon as if seeking guidance or closure. Others suggest that the lighthouse itself retains the echoes of human presence, a repository for the intense emotions and struggles of its past inhabitants. In any case, those who visit report a profound sense that the lighthouse is more than stone, wood, and light. It is a nexus of lingering energy, a place where the past refuses to remain silent. At night, the full spectrum of the lighthouse's haunting becomes apparent. The beacon's light sweeps across the cliffs, shadows move with apparent intent, and ghostly figures appear and disappear among the rocks. Sudden gusts of wind carry whispers from unseen mouths, brushing against visitors and raising goosebumps along their arms. Some claim to see the figures pause as if watching them, only to vanish when confronted. The interplay of light, shadow, wind, and sound creates an experience that is as mesmerizing as it is unnerving. Those who have stayed into the late hours often describe a disorienting sense of time, as though minutes stretch into hours while the spirits continue their silent vigil along the cliff edge. Cape Porpoise Lighthouse is not merely a historical maritime site. It is a place where isolation, tragedy, and the supernatural intersect. Every flicker of the beacon, every shadow on the cliffs, and every whispered word in the wind serves as a reminder that this lighthouse is alive with the echoes of past events. Visitors leave with a sense of awe and trepidation, unable to shake the feeling of being observed by forces that remain hidden yet ever present. It is a location where the ocean's roar masks stories of those who have passed, and where the cliffs themselves conceal secrets only revealed to the few willing to linger after dark. For anyone daring enough to approach Cape Porpoise Lighthouse at night, the experience is unforgettable. The light turns on and off without explanation, shadows pace and vanish, and whispers echo across the cliffs. The lighthouse stands as a reminder that some places hold more than history. They hold the lingering presence of lives once lived, tragedies never forgotten, and figures that glide silently between the realms of the living and the unseen. It is a haunting, enduring, and mysterious sentinel, guiding both ships and spirits along the edge of Maine's rugged coast. Pulpit Rock Lighthouse, perched on the rugged Isle Ohot, is a sentinel overlooking the churning waters of Maine's coastline. While it has guided sailors safely for generations, the lighthouse has become known for its eerie and unexplained phenomena, attracting the curiosity of those drawn to its haunted reputation. Visitors speak of ghostly figures gliding silently along the cliffs, moving with a purposeful grace that vanishes whenever approached. Cold drafts sweep across the rocky terrain, and sudden flashes of light illuminate the landscape in ways that defy explanation. The island, shrouded in fog and exposed to the relentless Atlantic winds, creates a perfect stage for the mysterious and supernatural. Approaching Pulpit Rock, one is struck by the stark beauty of the cliffs, jutting sharply into the ocean below. The path to the lighthouse winds over jagged rocks and sparse vegetation, each step accompanied by the rhythmic crashing of waves. Those who walk the cliffs often report a sensation of being observed, a presence lingering just beyond their sight. Shadowy forms are seen pacing along the edge, gliding smoothly across the rocks without a sound. They seem aware of the living, yet entirely separate, existing in a world that intersects briefly with our own. The figures vanish when directly confronted, leaving only the roar of the ocean and the chill of wind to mark their passage. Inside the lighthouse, the atmosphere is equally unsettling. The spiral staircases and narrow hallways are steeped in history, each creaking step echoing with the memory of keepers who once tended the beacon. Even when the lighthouse is empty, the light occasionally flickers and sweeps across the cliffs, as if someone or something were guiding it. Visitors have reported seeing the beam flare unexpectedly, casting long shadows that stretch across the rocks and disappear as quickly as they appear. These flashes of light often coincide with gusts of cold air, sending shivers down the spine of anyone near the windows or cliff edge. The combination of visual anomalies and sudden temperature changes creates a sense that the lighthouse is alive with unseen activity. The cliffs themselves are central to the haunting. Figures glide along the rocks in silence, sometimes pausing to look out over the Atlantic, their forms barely distinguishable against the mist and darkness. Observers describe a fluidity to their movement, a grace that seems almost otherworldly. The shadows rarely interact with each other, moving independently, yet with an unspoken purpose. Ghostly whispers float on the wind, soft and unintelligible, sometimes sounding like fragments of names or sentences, carried just far enough to be heard. These whispers appear to come from multiple directions, surrounding visitors with an unseen presence that is both alluring and unnerving. The wind itself seems to carry intention, gusts sweeping unexpectedly across the cliffs, chilling anyone who remains too long in one spot. The lighthouse's history amplifies its mysterious reputation. Keepers of Pulpit Rock lived in isolation, often battling storms and harsh conditions while ensuring the beacon remained lit. Over the years, countless shipwrecks and tragic losses at sea have become intertwined with stories of the lighthouse's ghosts. Some suggest that the figures on the cliffs are the spirits of sailors lost to the Atlantic, drawn to the light as if seeking guidance even in death. Others believe the lighthouse itself harbors the echoes of its keepers, preserving their presence through time and energy. Whether sailor or keeper, living or dead, each apparition seems bound to the lighthouse and cliffs, endlessly repeating movements and tasks that were once part of a life lived in solitude. Visitors frequently recount moments that defy explanation. A flash of light will illuminate a shadowy figure gliding across the cliff, only for the form to vanish moments later. Whispers rise unexpectedly, repeating fragments of phrases that cannot be understood. Cold drafts appear without cause, brushing past and chilling the skin, even on calm days. The combination of visual, auditory, and tactile experiences creates a profound sense of presence, a reminder that Pulpit Rock is more than stone, light, and sea. It is a crossroads where the living briefly intersect with the lingering energy of the past. At night, the haunting becomes even more pronounced. The lighthouse's beam sweeps across the cliffs, casting fleeting shadows that seem to move with intention. The wind carries whispers and distant cries, and sudden flashes of light illuminate forms that vanish before the observer can focus on them. The entire environment, cliffs, lighthouse, ocean, and wind, becomes a stage for the supernatural, a place where the ordinary and the unexplained coexist in uneasy harmony. Visitors leave with a lingering sense of disorientation, as though time itself behaves differently near Pulpit Rock. The cliffs retain their mysteries, keeping secrets only revealed to those brave enough to remain after dark. Local legend warns that Pulpit Rock is not a place to linger lightly. Those who stay until nightfall often feel the presence of the unseen, shadows moving just beyond sight, and whispers brushing against their ears. The lighthouse, the cliffs, and the relentless Atlantic combine to create an environment where reality and spectral illusion blur. It is a location steeped in history and mystery, where figures glide silently, lights flash inexplicably, and the wind carries voices from the past. Visitors are reminded that some places do not simply exist, they endure, harboring the echoes of lives, tragedies, and movements that continue long after the living have left. Pulpit Rock Lighthouse remains a beacon in both the literal and supernatural sense. The light sweeps across the cliffs, shadows glide silently, whispers rise from unseen mouths, and cold drafts move with apparent purpose. Those who visit are forever aware that the lighthouse is more than a structure. It is a living repository of presence, observation, and mystery. To stand on the cliffs at night is to witness the subtle choreography of the unseen, a dance between light, shadow, and wind that has endured for generations. It is a haunting, enduring reminder that some places are not only watched, they watch back. Burnt Island Lighthouse stands as a solitary sentinel off the rugged coast of Boothbay Harbor, Maine, its white tower rising above jagged rocks and turbulent waters. While it has guided countless sailors safely through the Atlantic's unpredictable tides, the lighthouse is known for more than its guiding light. Visitors report strange occurrences that defy explanation, footsteps echoing across the rocky shoreline when no one is present, phantom lights flashing over the waves, and an ever-present sense of being watched. The island, isolated and exposed to the full force of the Atlantic, seems to amplify every sound, every shadow, and every flicker of light into something both unsettling and otherworldly. Approaching Burnt Island, one immediately senses the stark solitude of the place. The path leading to the lighthouse winds through low, hardy vegetation, with waves crashing against the jagged rocks below. Even during the daytime, the island exudes a quiet tension, but it is at night that the true eeriness becomes apparent. Many visitors have recounted hearing the sound of footsteps across the rocks. Deliberate and rhythmic, yet no other person is in sight. These steps echo unnaturally, carrying across the island and blending with the roar of the ocean, making it difficult to discern reality from illusion. Those who have walked the cliffs at night often feel an invisible presence moving in tandem with them. A cold awareness brushing against their consciousness. The lighthouse itself seems alive with its own energy. Inside, the spiral staircases wind tightly, creaking underfoot, as though recalling the long-gone keepers who once tended the beacon. Even when unoccupied, the tower's light sometimes sweeps across the waves as if someone or something is guiding it. Phantom flashes of illumination appear through the fog, casting fleeting glows on the rocky shore and the churning waters below. Observers have described these flashes as purposeful, moving in patterns that suggest awareness. A silent sentinel observing the ocean and a few living souls daring enough to venture close. The interplay of light, shadow, and mist creates an unsettling atmosphere, where ordinary elements are transformed into something strange and spectral. The rocks surrounding the lighthouse are particularly active in reports of the supernatural. Figures are often glimpsed gliding along the jagged coastline, moving with a fluidity that seems almost inhuman. They vanish when approached, only to reappear farther along the cliffs, as though aware of every movement the visitor makes. Cold gusts sweep over the rocks unexpectedly, carrying faint whispers and unintelligible murmurs. These sounds seem to originate from multiple directions at once, surrounding visitors in a web of unseen activity. Some say the voices are the echoes of long-lost sailors, their cries for help carried on the wind, forever tied to the treacherous waters near the lighthouse. Others believe they are the spirits of the keepers themselves, bound to the island and the tower, replaying their duties in a spectral loop. At night, the haunting becomes more pronounced. The lighthouse beam cuts through the thick fog, revealing fleeting shapes along the cliffs that vanish when directly observed. Footsteps continue to echo across the rocks, sometimes close enough to provoke fear, sometimes distant and hauntingly soft. Phantom lights flicker on the waves, appearing and disappearing without explanation, illuminating the fog in brief, eerie bursts. These sudden illuminations often coincide with cold drafts that chill visitors to the bone, even during otherwise calm nights. The combination of auditory, visual, and tactile experiences creates a pervasive sense that the island is alive with unseen activity, a place where the living and the lingering dead intersect. Local legend warns that Burnt Island is not a place for the faint of heart. Those who linger after dark often feel the weight of unseen eyes, following their every step along the jagged coastline. Figures glide silently among the rocks, Lights flash across the waves, and the wind carries whispers that cannot be traced to any physical source. The island seems to exist outside of conventional time and space, as though it preserves fragments of history alongside the present moment. Visitors often leave disoriented, sensing that they have been part of a world larger and stranger than what is ordinarily perceived. The lighthouse's history adds depth to its mysterious reputation. Keepers lived in isolation, enduring storms, frost, and the relentless Atlantic winds, while ensuring that the beacon remained lit for passing ships. Over the centuries, countless maritime tragedies have occurred near the island, many of which remain unsolved. Some suggest that the figures seen on the rocks are the spirits of those lost at sea, drawn to the light in an eternal search for safety. Others believe the island itself holds memories of human presence, a lingering energy that manifests in cold gusts, footsteps, and flickering lights. The boundary between natural phenomena and the supernatural seems to blur here, leaving visitors uncertain of what they have truly experienced. Phantom activity at Burnt Island is not limited to sound and light. Some visitors report sudden, inexplicable movements of objects within the lighthouse itself. Tools, ropes, and lanterns occasionally shift from place to place without human intervention. The combination of shifting objects, mysterious footsteps, and spectral illumination creates an environment where ordinary life is suspended, replaced by an almost tangible sense of the otherworldly. The island becomes a space where the past is always present, and the unseen is constantly in motion. Burnt Island Lighthouse remains a striking monument to both human ingenuity and the unknowable forces that seem to inhabit the world. The tower continues to guide sailors safely, yet it also serves as a reminder that some places are more than they appear. Visitors experience the eerie dance of shadows on the cliffs, the echo of phantom footsteps, and the flickering of lights across the fog and waves. The island preserves these phenomena, offering a haunting tableau of movement, sound, and light that endures long after the living depart. To stand on the cliffs at night is to confront the delicate balance between the seen and unseen, to feel the gaze of hidden watchers, and to experience a landscape where the ordinary becomes extraordinary and the ordinary rules of reality do not always apply. Burnt Island Lighthouse is not merely a location, it is a living repository of memory, presence, and mystery. Figures glide along the rocks, ghostly lights flash over the waves, whispers rise with the wind, and footsteps echo along jagged cliffs. Visitors leave forever aware that some places do more than exist. They observe, interact, and endure, keeping watch over the land and sea, long after human eyes have turned away. Doubling Point Lighthouse rises from the rocky cliffs of Maine, its white tower a stark silhouette against the ever-changing sky. Perched at the edge of the Sheepscot River, it has long served as a guiding beacon for sailors navigating the treacherous waters where the river meets the Atlantic. Yet, beyond its practical purpose, Doubling Point is shrouded in stories of unexplained phenomena. Visitors report figures appearing along the cliffs, vanishing suddenly into the mist, and lights emanating from the lighthouse even when no keeper is present. The combination of isolation, the roar of the water, and the persistent fog gives the lighthouse an air of otherworldly mystery that draws both curiosity and apprehension. Approaching the lighthouse, one immediately notices the haunting stillness of the surrounding landscape. The cliffs drop sharply into the river below, their jagged edges battered by relentless waves. Even on calm days, a faint wind carries a chill from the water, rustling the sparse vegetation along the cliffside. At night, this isolation transforms into a profound sense of solitude, where each step seems amplified by the echoing rocks. Many visitors recount the sensation of being watched, a quiet pressure in the air that grows stronger as darkness falls. Shadows shift unnaturally, and sometimes, fleeting figures are glimpsed moving near the cliff edge, vanishing as soon as they are observed. The lighthouse itself appears alive with its own energy. Inside, the spiral staircase winds tightly to the top, creaking under the weight of visitors, yet seeming to respond to something unseen. On multiple occasions, the tower's light has been seen sweeping across the river and surrounding cliffs, even when no one is present. These unexplained illuminations are not random. Witnesses describe them moving in deliberate patterns, pausing briefly to highlight portions of the landscape before continuing their slow, methodical sweep. Some believe this is the presence of the original keepers, forever bound to their duties, ensuring the light continues to guide travelers even in their absence. Others suggest the lighthouse holds echoes of the past, its beams a manifestation of memories long preserved within the stone walls. The cliffs near Doubling Point are particularly active in tales of the supernatural. Figures are frequently reported pacing near the edges, often just out of reach in the thick fog. Visitors describe a sense of motion that is deliberate yet impossible to follow, as if the figures are aware of their observers, appearing only when unseen and vanishing when confronted. The air is often pierced by sudden gusts of wind, carrying faint whispers or unintelligible murmurs that seem to come from the cliffs themselves. Some say these are the voices of lost sailors, whose cries for guidance linger in the wind, while others believe they are echoes of keepers long past, bound to the lighthouse by duty and fate. At night, the lighthouse's eerie nature intensifies. The light cuts through the mist, casting long shadows over the cliffs and water. Figures appear along the precipice, their forms indistinct and wavering, sometimes following visitors for moments before disappearing entirely. Cold gusts sweep across the rocks, making hair stand on end and leaving goosebumps in their wake. Phantom footsteps can be heard in the distance, neither close enough to be identified nor consistent enough to seem natural. The combination of visual, auditory, and tactile phenomena creates an experience that is both mesmerizing and unsettling, leaving visitors questioning the boundary between reality and the supernatural. Local legend insists that Doubling Point is not a place to linger after dark. Those who do often report sensations of being followed, unseen eyes tracking their every movement along the cliffside. Some have claimed to witness figures gliding along the cliffs or the water's edge, moving with a fluidity that seems impossible for human beings. Lights flash from the tower, guiding no one in particular, yet illuminating sections of the landscape, as if drawing attention to something just out of reach. Whispers rise in the wind, repeating names or phrases that visitors cannot place, leaving an indelible mark on their memory. The history of the lighthouse deepens its enigmatic reputation. Built to guide ships safely through the confluence of river and sea, Doubling Point has witnessed countless shipwrecks, rescues, and the passage of many generations of keepers. Each of these lives has left traces, some say, imprinted on the landscape itself. Visitors often interpret the strange occurrences as echoes of these past lives. The figures on the cliffs may represent lost sailors or former keepers. The inexplicable light may symbolize vigilance and protection extending beyond death. The whispers in the wind could be remnants of human presence forever entwined with the natural environment. The blend of history, isolation, and natural beauty creates an atmosphere where ordinary experience feels suspended, replaced by the awareness of unseen forces at work. Experiences at Doubling Point are not limited to sight and sound. Some visitors report sudden chills, unexplained movements of objects near the lighthouse, or a feeling of being gently guided along the cliffs by invisible hands. The interplay of shadows, light, and sound creates a sense of constant motion, as though the island itself participates in a ritual repeated for centuries. Each gust of wind, flicker of light, and shifting shadow contributes to a landscape that seems alive, simultaneously familiar and alien, drawing visitors into an experience both mesmerizing and unnerving. Doubling Point Lighthouse remains a striking testament to human ingenuity and the mysteries of the natural world. The tower continues its essential function, guiding vessels safely through dangerous waters. Yet it also offers a glimpse into the realm of the inexplicable. Figures glide along the cliffs, phantom lights flash across the fog, footsteps echo across the rocks, and whispers rise on the wind. Visitors leave with a sense that they have witnessed something larger than themselves, a place where the past and present intersect, and the boundaries of reality are both challenged and preserved. The lighthouse is more than a navigational aid. It is a sentinel of memory, mystery, an unseen presence, forever watching over the cliffs and waters of a Ram Island Ledge Lighthouse, perched on the jagged rocks of Boothbay Harbor, Maine, has long served as a steadfast guide to sailors navigating the treacherous waters where the bay meets the Atlantic. Its sturdy tower, painted white and crowned with a gleaming lantern, rises defiantly against the sea winds, a symbol of guidance and vigilance. Yet, beneath its practical purpose lies a history shrouded in eerie tales and unexplained phenomena. Visitors consistently report sudden flashes of light emanating from the tower, accompanied by whispers drifting across the rocky ledges. Shadowy forms appear among the stones, vanishing the moment they are approached, leaving observers with a lingering sense of unease and wonder. The approach to Ram Island Ledge is an experience in itself. The rocks are slick from the ever-present spray of the ocean, and the wind carries a chill that cuts to the bone even on calm days. The air is thick with the scent of salt water and the faint tempts of seaweed clinging to the stones. From a distance, the lighthouse appears peaceful, its white tower gleaming in the sunlight or under a canopy of mist. However, as night falls, the landscape transforms. The cliffs and rocks take on an ominous silhouette, waves crash more violently, and the lighthouse's light begins to interact with the fog in strange and unpredictable ways. Many visitors report feeling watched, a subtle pressure in the air that seems to track their every movement along the ledge. Inside the lighthouse, the spiral staircase winds tightly upward, each step creaking underfoot, resonating in a hollow echo that seems far louder than it should. Some have claimed that the light atop the tower, when active, does not merely sweep across the waters to guide ships. It also moves in patterns that seem deliberate, almost as if it is observing the shoreline and cliffs themselves. At times, the beacon flashes abruptly, illuminating the rocky landscape in stark, white bursts before plunging everything back into darkness. These flashes are often accompanied by the sound of faint whispers, a low murmur that seems to emanate from the rocks below, rather than the tower itself. Visitors describe the voices as fragmented, repeating snippets of names or phrases that feel just out of comprehension. The cliffs surrounding the lighthouse are particularly active with unexplained phenomena. Shadowy figures are often seen pacing along the edges, their movements fluid yet impossible to follow. Observers frequently describe catching glimpses of these shapes from the corner of their eyes, only for them to vanish the instant they turn to look directly. Some speculate that these figures are the lingering echoes of past keepers or sailors lost to the sea, their presence forever tied to the lighthouse and its rocky domain. Others suggest that the entire island holds residual energy, preserving moments of past lives in a loop that visitors can inadvertently witness. Night amplifies the lighthouse's haunting nature. The wind carries sudden gusts, chilling even the warmest nights. And with each gust, whispers rise and fall, blending with the crash of the waves. Visitors report that the rocks themselves seem to shift in perception, appearing closer or further away than they should, and shadowy forms move with an intent that is impossible to predict. Phantom footsteps echo across the ledges, sometimes approaching and retreating in ways that suggest an invisible presence circling the lighthouse. Even in the absence of human activity, the island feels alive, the combination of light, shadow, and sound creating a constant, subtle tension that keeps visitors alert and unsettled. Locals of Boothbay Harbor have long shared stories of the lighthouse's eerie reputation. They warn that those who linger too long after dark may feel the weight of unseen eyes, the sensation of being followed, or the sudden presence of figures that vanish before a confrontation. Some recount witnessing the light flashing in the tower when no keeper is present, as though it is signaling to someone or something that exists only in the island's fog. Whispers carry across the rocks, repeating names, dates, or partial phrases, leaving visitors with a sense that they are intruding on a space inhabited by more than just memories. The history of Ram Island Ledge Lighthouse adds to its mystique. Constructed to guide vessels safely through dangerous waters, it has endured centuries of storms, shipwrecks, and countless keepers who have maintained the beacon's vigilance. Each life spent tending the light has left a subtle imprint, and some believe that these energies coalesce into the unexplained activity observed today. Shadowy forms along the ledges could be echoes of these keepers, continuing their duties long after death. The sudden flashes of light, inexplicable in their timing, may be attempts to communicate, warn, or simply reenact moments from the past. Even the whispers carried by the wind could be remnants of conversations, warnings, or laments, preserved in the island's unique atmosphere. Visitors also report physical sensations associated with the lighthouse. Cold spots appear suddenly, even in calm weather. The rocky ledges often feel treacherously uneven, though no one reports slipping or losing balance when alone in these instances. Some have claimed to feel brushes of unseen hands or the faint tug of a presence guiding an oar, warning them as they navigate the cliffs. The combination of visual, auditory, and tactile phenomena makes the experience of Ram Island Ledge Lighthouse immersive and unforgettable. Ram Island Ledge Lighthouse remains a striking symbol of maritime safety and supernatural intrigue. Its light continues to guide vessels through Boothbay Harbor's treacherous waters. Yet it also serves as a focal point for experiences that defy explanation. Shadowy forms pace the cliffs, lights flash unexpectedly, whispers rise from the rocks, and phantom footsteps echo across the island. Those who visit often leave with a sense that they have witnessed a realm where the past and present intertwine, where unseen forces observe silently, and where the lighthouse itself is more than stone and light. It is a living testament to memory, mystery, and the enduring presence of the unexplained. Cape Small Lighthouse, perched on the rugged cliffs of Small Point, Maine, stands as both a guide to mariners and a sentinel of secrets. Its white tower rises against the coastal sky, steadfast against crashing waves and the ceaseless wind. Yet it is far more than a beacon for passing ships. Visitors who venture to the lighthouse after sunset often speak of strange phenomena. Figures pacing silently along the cliff edges, phantom lights flickering from the tower, and shadows stretching unnaturally across the jagged rocks below. There is a palpable tension in the air, as if the lighthouse itself holds memories it refuses to release. Approaching Cape Small Lighthouse, one notices the cliffs first, jagged, slick with sea spray, and treacherously uneven. The waves churn violently against the rocks, sending a fine mist into the air. By day, the lighthouse appears serene, its whitewashed tower gleaming in the sunlight. But as dusk falls, the cliffs and tower transform into something ominous. The landscape darkens, the waves' rhythm intensifies, and the light from the tower, even when unattended, begins to flicker in irregular bursts. Locals often warn travelers not to linger past dark, claiming the lighthouse is a place where the living and unseen converge. Visitors report the most unsettling experiences along the cliffs themselves. Figures are often glimpsed pacing silently near the edges, their movements smooth and purposeful. Yet when one turns to face them directly, they vanish without a trace. Sometimes the figures appear in groups, moving in formation as though performing a ritual long forgotten. Other times, a single shadow is observed, tracing the contours of the rocks as though marking territory. The phenomenon is not limited to visual sightings. Sudden cold gusts sweep over the cliffs, brushing across the skin and carrying with them whispers that are fragmented and fleeting. Words are heard, often names or half-phrases, but they are always just out of full comprehension. The lighthouse tower itself exhibits equally mysterious behavior. Phantom lights are frequently seen flickering from the top of the tower, as if the lantern is being operated by an invisible hand. These flashes are unpredictable, illuminating the cliffs and coastline in brief, brilliant bursts, then fading into darkness. Visitors report that the light sometimes sweeps in patterns that seem deliberate, scanning the rocks and shoreline rather than just serving as a navigational guide. Some theorize that these signals are echoes of past keepers or sailors, while others suggest that the lighthouse itself may be alive in some inexplicable way, responding to the presence of those who dare to approach. Inside the tower, the spiral staircase adds to the sense of unease. Each step creaks underfoot, the sound amplified in the hollow interior. Many visitors have described an inexplicable sensation of being watched as they ascend, an awareness of eyes that do not exist. The lighthouse's walls seem to harbor memories, the stone absorbing the energy of countless storms, countless keepers, and countless moments of fear and tragedy. Some have reported hearing faint footsteps echoing along the stairs, though they are alone. Others claim that shadows flit along the interior walls, disappearing when looked at directly. The combination of sound, sight, and sensation creates an experience that is both immersive and disorienting. The cliffs below the lighthouse are equally enigmatic. Rocks appear to shift subtly in perception, creating illusions of depth and distance that do not match reality. Shadowy forms are glimpsed, moving with apparent intent, often disappearing when approached. Visitors frequently describe the sensation of cold hands brushing past them or a subtle tug at clothing, as though unseen presences are guiding or warning them. The fog that rolls in from the sea intensifies these experiences, blending visual distortions with the sounds of waves and wind, and making it nearly impossible to distinguish natural movement from the supernatural. Locals of Small Point share stories passed down through generations. They speak of lighthouse keepers who vanished without explanation, sailors whose cries echo along the cliffs, and visitors who return from the lighthouse visibly shaken, recounting encounters with figures no one else saw. Some say the flickering lights are attempts to communicate with the living, while others insist they are manifestations of the lighthouse's long memory. Ghostly figures pacing the cliffs are thought to be lingering souls, trapped between duty and death, repeating patterns of behavior that have existed for decades. Even the whispers are said to be warnings or fragments of conversations from long ago, preserved in the winds that sweep across the rocks. The combination of visual, auditory, and physical phenomena creates an inescapable atmosphere of tension and mystery. Visitors report that the air grows unnaturally cold, even on warm summer evenings, and that the sounds of the ocean are occasionally drowned out by indistinct murmurs from unseen mouths. Figures appear and vanish along the cliff edges with no pattern, while the lighthouse lantern flashes in irregular, purposeful bursts. Some witnesses have recounted feeling an almost magnetic pull toward the cliffs or the tower, as though the spirits or energies are guiding their movements, testing the courage of those who wander too close. Pemaquid Island Lighthouse, standing proudly on the rugged cliffs of Bristol, Maine, has long been a sentinel of the coast, guiding ships safely through treacherous waters. By day, its whitewashed tower and surrounding buildings exude quiet majesty, framed by the Atlantic's relentless waves. But when night falls, the lighthouse takes on a far more mysterious, even ominous character. Visitors who wander its rocky perimeter or climb the spiral staircases often report strange and unsettling phenomena. Cries echoing across the waves, shadows appearing near the cliffs, and an overwhelming sensation of being watched. These encounters have transformed Pemaquid into a place where the natural and the supernatural intertwine, drawing the curious, the brave, and occasionally the fearful. Approaching the lighthouse, one is first struck by the cliffs themselves. Jagged and slick from constant ocean spray, they rise sharply from the waves below, forming a perilous boundary between land and sea. By day, the Atlantic churns against these rocks with a predictable rhythm, a constant reminder of nature's power. At night, however, the landscape becomes strange and disorienting. The waves seem louder, crashing against the rocks with a hollow resonance, and the wind carries faint sounds that do not belong to the sea alone. Visitors have described hearing cries echoing across the waves, voices that seem both near and impossibly distant, calling out in a tone of anguish that freezes the blood. The cliffs themselves are often the setting for eerie sightings. Shadowy figures appear along the edges, pacing silently, their movements smooth and deliberate. When approached, they vanish, leaving no trace behind. Some witnesses report seeing multiple figures moving in unison, as if engaged in tasks long forgotten. Others encounter a lone shadow, drifting along the cliff edge, watching without acknowledgement. The experience is heightened when fog rolls in from the ocean, swallowing the surroundings and creating an environment where the imagination blends seamlessly with reality. In the mist, these figures seem to move closer. Or perhaps the observer moves closer without realizing it, giving the impression that the cliffs are alive with unseen presences. The lighthouse tower itself holds its share of mysteries. Even when abandoned or unattended, the lantern occasionally flickers to life, casting sweeping beams across the ocean and cliffs. The flashes are irregular, sometimes short bursts, other times prolonged sweeps, and often illuminate areas where no person stands. Some believe these lights are echoes of past keepers, trapped in perpetual duty, while others think the lighthouse has absorbed the energy of countless storms, shipwrecks, and tragedies, manifesting it through the beacon itself. Visitors frequently report feeling drawn toward the tower, compelled to ascend the spiral staircase, despite an inner sense of foreboding. Inside, the lighthouse amplifies sensations of unease. The narrow, winding stairs creak with every step, echoing in the hollow tower. Many visitors report an inexplicable sensation of being observed, as if unseen eyes are tracking their movements. Shadows flit along the walls, appearing and disappearing at the edge of vision. Some hear faint whispers carried by the wind, soft and fragmented, often repeating names or incomplete phrases. Occasionally, a visitor will hear a single word clearly, a warning or plea that lingers long after the sound fades. The combination of auditory and visual phenomena creates an immersive experience that blurs the boundary between reality and imagination. The cliffs below continue to harbor unexplained activity. Rocks seem to shift perceptibly in peripheral vision, and shadows move with apparent intent, sometimes darting between jagged outcroppings or pausing at the water's edge. Cold gusts frequently sweep across the cliffs, chilling the skin even on mild evenings, and sometimes seem to carry whispers or faint cries. Visitors often feel an invisible presence close behind them, urging them onward or warning them away. The fog intensifies these experiences, obscuring familiar landmarks and giving the cliffs a sense of endlessness. In such moments, it is impossible to discern whether one is observing ghosts, echoes of the past, or natural phenomena amplified by heightened senses. Local lore deepens the aura of mystery surrounding Pemaquid Island Lighthouse. Stories passed down over generations speak of shipwrecked sailors whose spirits wander the cliffs, of lighthouse keepers who disappeared without explanation, and of visitors who returned with tales of shadowy figures that no one else saw. Some accounts describe the cries carried by the wind as originating from lost sailors, their anguish preserved by the constant presence of the sea. Others suggest that the flickering light is a warning, a way for the lighthouse to communicate with those who tread too close to danger, human or otherwise. The combination of the cliffs, the tower, and the Atlantic creates a setting where every sense is heightened. Sight, sound, and touch are influenced by the lighthouse's environment, turning ordinary experiences into something uncanny. Visitors report that the air grows unnaturally cold. The sounds of the waves are punctuated by inexplicable whispers, and shadows move independently of any natural source. The cries echoing from the ocean feel personal, as though each visitor is being addressed individually. Monhegan Island Lighthouse stands as a solitary sentinel on the rugged cliffs of Monhegan Island, Maine, a place where the Atlantic Ocean crashes endlessly against jagged rocks. By day, the lighthouse is a quiet landmark, guiding vessels safely through treacherous waters and offering breathtaking views of the surrounding coastline. By night, however, the lighthouse transforms into a place steeped in mystery, where visitors report a series of eerie occurrences that defy explanation. Figures are said to move silently along the rocks after dark, and lights flash intermittently from the tower, casting shadows and illuminating ghostly shapes that vanish the moment they are approached. These phenomena have given Monhegan Island Lighthouse a reputation as one of the most haunted coastal sites in New England, drawing both curious travelers and those with a fascination for the supernatural. The cliffs surrounding the lighthouse are formidable, jagged formations that rise sharply from the turbulent waters below. They provide a dramatic backdrop during daylight hours, but at night they take on a far more sinister character. Visitors describe the rocks as seeming alive, their edges shifting in the darkness, while shadows appear to flit across their surfaces. Figures are often seen pacing along the cliff edges, moving with a deliberate grace that is almost human but not quite. They are glimpsed out of the corner of the eye, and when looked at directly, they vanish, leaving no trace behind. Some witnesses report seeing multiple figures moving in unison, as if performing a task long forgotten, while others encounter a solitary silhouette, frozen in place, as though observing the living before disappearing into the fog. The lighthouse tower itself is central to many of these mysterious events. Even when unoccupied, the beacon occasionally flashes, illuminating the rocks and cliffs in sudden bursts of light. These flashes are erratic, sometimes long and steady, other times brief and staccato, revealing shapes that seem to belong to no living being. Witnesses often report a strange pull toward the tower, a compulsion to climb its spiral staircase, despite an inner warning not to proceed. Inside, the narrow stairs creak beneath each step, echoing through the hollow structure. Many visitors describe a sensation of being watched, feeling the presence of unseen eyes tracking their movements. Shadows move along the walls independently of any light source, appearing and disappearing without explanation. The air around Monhegan Island Lighthouse carries an eerie quality, especially during foggy nights. The Atlantic fog rolls in unpredictably, obscuring the cliffs and creating an otherworldly atmosphere. Figures that are invisible in clear air become suddenly apparent in the mist, moving with purpose among the rocks and ledges. Cold gusts sweep across the cliffs, carrying faint whispers that rise and fall like the waves themselves. Some visitors claim to hear voices calling their names, while others report distant laughter or cries echoing across the water, sounds that seem both near and impossibly far. The fog amplifies these auditory illusions, creating a sense of isolation and heightened awareness that makes the lighthouse and its surroundings feel alive with unseen activity. The phenomenon of ghostly figures on the cliffs is not limited to the shoreline. Some visitors have spotted shapes moving among the rocks at higher elevations, standing near the edge of precipices or along narrow pathways. These figures appear deliberate in their movements, sometimes pacing back and forth, sometimes stopping to look out at the ocean. When approached, they vanish, leaving behind only a cold wind or the faint impression that someone has passed by. Others have observed fleeting silhouettes that disappear behind boulders or into the fog, reappearing moments later in places that defy logic. The unpredictability of these appearances adds to the sense of unease, as it becomes impossible to anticipate where or when the next figure will manifest. The lighthouse's flashing beacon often amplifies the eerie atmosphere. When the light cuts through the fog, it briefly illuminates shapes that appear human, yet distorted, as if existing partially in another realm. Observers describe seeing multiple figures, some seemingly engaged in silent tasks, others simply standing, watching the ocean. The sudden illumination often produces a momentary sense of clarity, only for the figures to vanish as the light sweeps past them. These experiences have left many visitors with a lingering sense of having witnessed something both real and inexplicable. as if the lighthouse is a bridge between the ordinary world and a realm of lingering spirits. Local lore has grown around these accounts. Stories speak of shipwrecked sailors whose spirits roam the cliffs, of lighthouse keepers who never returned from evening inspections, and of visitors who claim to have seen figures that no one else can see. Some suggest the flashing light is more than a navigational tool. It may be a warning or a signal, a residual echo of past tragedies preserved in the stone and metal of the tower. The cries and whispers carried by the wind are said to belong to those lost at sea, eternally replaying their final moments, bound to the lighthouse and cliffs where they met the Atlantic. The combination of cliffs, fog, and the lighthouse itself creates an environment that heightens every sense. Sight, sound, and touch are all affected by the unpredictable interplay of natural and supernatural elements. Shadows flit across the rocks, often moving independently of the light, while whispers and cries drift on the wind, sometimes carrying names or fragmented phrases. Cold gusts appear without cause, brushing against visitors and leaving a lingering chill. The sensation of being watched is nearly constant, and those who linger too long often leave with an uneasy awareness that unseen eyes have been tracking them, that the figures on the cliffs continue to move after they depart, and that the flashing beacon may still be illuminating spirits invisible to the human eye. Monhegan Island Lighthouse endures as both a vital coastal landmark and a place of haunting mysteries. Its beacon continues to sweep across the Atlantic, guiding sailors safely, while the cliffs and Fog Harbor figures that pace endlessly, flashings of light revealing ghostly shapes, and whispers that echo from unseen mouths. Visitors who brave the night may witness shadows moving among the rocks, feel the chilling presence of lost souls, and hear cries carried by the wind. Whether these experiences are the lingering echoes of history or something beyond comprehension, the lighthouse remains a place where the ordinary and the supernatural converge. A haunting sentinel over the sea, steadfast in both its guidance and its mystery. Final Haunted Lighthouse Cliff in Maine rises dramatically over the Atlantic, a jagged promontory where waves crash endlessly against unforgiving rocks. By day, the cliff is a breathtaking vista, where gulls wheel overhead and the lighthouse stands as a proud sentinel, its white tower a beacon for ships navigating the treacherous coastline. By night, however, the cliffs take on an entirely different character, one that has drawn locals and travelers into whispered tales of the supernatural for decades. Shadowy figures are said to pace endlessly along the cliff edges, and the lighthouse's beacon often shines without warning, unbidden and unexplained. Fog rolls across the rocks in thick, swirling clouds, and the distant echo of waves carries whispers that seem more than the wind and surf. Those who venture too close to the edge after dark speak of an overwhelming sensation that they are being watched. The spirits of lost sailors, vanished keepers, and others who never left the cliffs, lingering just out of sight. The cliffs themselves are jagged and uneven, a treacherous terrain that rises sharply from the churning ocean below. At night, shadows move along these cliffs, figures glimpsed from the corner of the eye that vanish when observed directly. Some appear to pace, moving with a slow, deliberate rhythm, as though performing duties long forgotten. Others stand motionless near the edge, staring out at the waves in silence, only to disappear into the rolling fog moments later. Witnesses have described multiple figures appearing at once, their forms fleeting and indistinct, yet undeniably present. They seem both human and otherworldly, their motions deliberate yet impossibly fluid, and their presence evokes a deep unease that lingers long after the figures vanish. The lighthouse itself is central to the haunting. Even when abandoned, its beacon sometimes turns on, sweeping across the cliffs and the ocean as if a keeper were still tending it. The light flashes in erratic patterns, illuminating the fog in sudden bursts, revealing shapes and silhouettes that vanish when the beam moves past them. Some visitors have described seeing multiple shadowy figures within the glow, as though the light briefly exposes the hidden lives of those bound to the cliffs. The tower, narrow and spiraling, creaks faintly as if echoing the steps of keepers who walked its stairs long ago. Many report a sensation of being drawn toward the tower, an irresistible pull to ascend its steps despite a gnawing fear. Once inside, shadows flit across the walls, moving independently of any source of light. Fog is a constant companion at the cliffs. Rolling in from the Atlantic, it wraps the rocks and the lighthouse in a thick, impenetrable shroud. Within this fog, the shadows of figures are amplified. Shapes that are invisible in clear air appear suddenly and move with apparent intent. Cold gusts sweep across the cliffs without warning, carrying with them whispers that rise and fall like the waves themselves. Some claim to hear voices calling their names. Others report faint laughter or cries that seem impossibly close yet distant at the same time. The fog transforms the cliffs into a liminal space, a boundary between the world of the living and the realm of spirits, where ordinary laws of perception are suspended and the past seems ever present. Many of the shadowy figures appear to be tied to the sea. Locals speak of sailors lost in storms whose bodies were never recovered, their spirits now pacing the cliffs in restless repetition. Some figures are thought to be former lighthouse keepers who vanished under mysterious circumstances, eternally bound to the tower and the cliffside they once tended. Witnesses report that these figures sometimes seem aware of the living, following intruders with silent, deliberate steps, only to vanish when approached. The combination of cliffs, waves, and spectral figures creates an atmosphere of constant tension, a sense that the land itself is alive with memories of tragedy and loss. The sounds of the cliffs enhance the eerie experience. Waves crash relentlessly against the rocks, their roar punctuated by the occasional sharp crack of splintering stone. Faint whispers, almost drowned by the ocean, seem to emanate from the cliff itself. Some visitors claim to hear fragmented conversations, voices speaking in tones of warning or despair. Others report hearing distant singing, a lullaby carried on the wind from unseen mouths. These auditory phenomena, coupled with the visual presence of figures on the cliffs, produce a feeling of disorientation and unease, as if the boundary between the living and the dead is thin, and the cliffs themselves serve as a stage for repeated tragedies. The lighthouse's flashing beacon often exposes shapes hidden in the fog. When the light sweeps across the cliffs, it briefly illuminates figures that appear human, yet strangely distorted. Some are seen performing repetitive tasks, as if tending to ships or checking equipment, their actions silent and precise. Others are motionless, facing the ocean, appearing to watch and wait. The sudden illumination is often fleeting, and the figures disappear instantly when the beam passes beyond them, leaving witnesses with a sense of having glimpsed another reality for a fraction of a moment. Locals warn that lingering too long at final Haunted Lighthouse Cliff can have lasting effects. Visitors often describe the sensation of being watched even after leaving, as if the spirits of the cliffs follow them in memory. Some speak of dreams populated by shadowy figures, of hearing whispers in empty rooms long after returning home. Others claim to feel drawn back to the cliffs, a subtle pull that cannot be ignored, as though the spirits themselves beckon those willing to linger. Final Haunted Lighthouse Cliff remains a place where history and the supernatural converge. Its cliffs continue to endure the relentless Atlantic, while shadows pace endlessly. Lights flash inexplicably, fog drifts across the rocks, and whispers echo from the waves. Visitors who brave the night may witness figures gliding along the cliff edges, feel the presence of lost sailors and vanished keepers, and experience the eerie illumination of shapes revealed by the lighthouse beacon. The cliffs, the fog, and the spectral figures together create a landscape where the living and the dead coexist, and where the mysteries of the past remain ever present, silently watching the ocean below. These are Maine's Haunted Lighthouse Cliffs, where the lights shine by themselves. Shadowy figures pace along foggy rocks, and whispers of lost souls echo endlessly over the waves. Each cliff holds the memory of shipwrecks, vanished keepers, and restless spirits who cannot leave. If you ever visit these cliffs at night, beware. Ghostly figures may appear beside you, the lights may flash unexpectedly, and the whispers may call your name. The cliffs are alive with history and with spirits who linger, watching and waiting for anyone who dares approach. Thank you for exploring Maine's Haunted Lighthouse Cliffs with me. Stay cautious, stay curious, and always respect the spirits who haunt these heights, forever drifting, forever whispering, and forever bound to the rocks and fog of the coastline.